Good morning, everyone. We're going to call the meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Today is Thursday, September 6th, 2018. It is just after 8:30 a.m. We're in the Community Center at the Sierra Room and also streaming on the internet. And if you have cable, we're on the public access channel on cable. Could we please have a roll call for the record, please?
Supervisor Abad. Here. Supervisor Bonkowski. Here. Supervisor Bagwell. Here. Supervisor Barrett.
Here.
Mayor Kroll. Quorum is present.
Thank you very much. Could we call on our good friend Pat Propster of Calvary Chapel to get us started? And Pat, maybe you'd talk to us a little bit today about what's going to go on next week, too?
Sure.
Thank you.
Good morning, all. In light of the date, we're going to be out at Mills Park once again, and I thank our community for working so hard at getting a piece of memorabilia, even though it's hard as it is to look at when we're out there, and if you walk by it on a hike, having that piece of steel from that twisted steel from that building that went down, one of the two. What a day of crisis that has been for us, and here it's 17 years later. There's an entire generation of kids that have been born that need to remember what our nation did and the heroic acts of everybody that were involved with that. And Mayor, thank you so much for... Oh, we're connected, man.
What time is it?
It's going to be at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock, yeah. So you're going.
At night.
Yeah.
Next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday evening, yeah. So it'll be bring your friends, come on out, because we need to remember. We made a promise 17 years ago to never forget and always remember. Our fire chief brought that to light last year, and he will once again speak to us. And Mayor, you're going to be out there, and Sheriff Furlong's going to be out there, and we'll have several ministers that will pray in between each one of the inspirational words that will be given. But we need to just take that night of solemn memory, and in light of that, of all the dates, 911. Here's another one for you, and this is Psalm 91:1. So it's Psalm 911, and it says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. He will say to my Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress." So that's where we take our solemn rest in Him, and our strength comes from Him. So let's pray. Lord, we thank you so much that even in the face of tragedy, horror, violence, hatred, Lord, that we can find a refuge in you. And Lord, as a old Southern Baptist preacher friend of mine used to say, sometimes we need Jesus with skin on, and that's the rest of us, the arms and the feet and the voices and the love that we share one to another. Your word tells us that they will know that you are mine by your love one to another. And Lord, I ask you that as we as a community reach out to one another, console, hold up, pray for, think about, and intercede for those who paid the ultimate price, Lord. And Lord, also in light of that, a date comes right behind that of October 1st, that great tragedy in Las Vegas, Lord. All of these things hitting our communities. And then, Lord, we see the great acts of heroism and heroic things that go on with firefighters, police, first responders, the military, Lord, coming to the aid. The firefighters that are out fighting fires now, Lord, as a heroic act. As we continue our daily lives, we see remnants of the smoke still hanging around. So, Lord, we ask you for your protection for each one of them. Lord, I ask you that you would lead us and guide us. Thank you for these faithful leaders that sit as the Board of Supervisors over this incredible city, the finest city in America, as our mayor so says often, Lord. And I thank you that his heart is for this city, and the rest of these board here is also. So, Lord, I just ask you that you would intercede right now. As we intercede to you, you would intercede towards us, giving us faith and strength and hope to continue on and hold each other up when we're down and encourage one another while it's still called today. And we pray this all in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once again, Mayor, thank you, and Board, thank you. All right. Blessings.
All right, we're now on item number 5, public comment. This is the public's invited to comment on, discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this body. We also generally take public comment throughout the meeting as we go forward and at the end as well. Any public comment? Hope, come on up.
Good morning. For the record, Hope Tingle. Sorry for my attire. I just got done walking my dog around the north side of Carson City, which is one of the things I want to comment on. My second comment is the Nevada appeal indicated that the item about the Lampa Ranch development, the Blackstone item that the Planning Commission heard last month, that it was a unanimous vote to bring it forward, and I voted against that item, so I just wanted to make that clear because they had it wrong in the paper. And when I was walking my dog, I always walk around the North Carson area, and I don't know if anybody's been by the North Carson Walmart lately, but the trash and garbage, again, it is just, I get so distressed about it because it makes us look like we can't take care of our community. And while it's an isolated area of town, there are a lot of people in and out of that particular Walmart, the Home Depot that's on the east side of it. So if there's something that we can do to clean that up.
You know, it's private property. Talk to the landowners. It's private property. We can talk to the landowners about keeping their property clean. And then sometimes, you know, if we have the wherewithal, we can maybe put a little shame on and say, send some of our people out there and say, this is how you clean it up.
Well, I know that Muscle Powered occasionally will go out on a Clean Up the Community Day, and I much appreciate that. I know, and it's not the only area. I walk up on Lone Mountain, and I'm hesitant to do that anymore because of the homeless issue up there and the amount of garbage that is piling up there as well. And there are some things that I see that I wish I could unsee because it's not very pretty. And I just, like I said, I'm a little distressed about it. And again, it makes us look like we cannot keep our community clean. And if we're trying to encourage people to move here, and we want to present a picture that we are worthy of that. So that's my public comment.
All right, thanks, Hope.
You bet.
All right, any other public comments? Anybody? Okay, I don't see any, so we'll take it as we go through here. We're now going to go on to item number 6, the approval of the minutes of August 16th, 2018. Everybody, board members had a chance to look. If we're ready for a motion. Supervisor Bonkowski.
I move to approve the minutes of the Carson City Board of Supervisors for August 16th, 2018 as presented.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Now we're going to take up the possible adoption of the agenda. There are a couple things we need to do today. So on the consent agenda, we're going to pull items 11B and 11C. It's 11 Bravo and 11 Charlie. Those deal with the South Carson Street issue. They'll be pulled just for independent discussion. And then we will move item 11B, which is, wait a minute, excuse me, we'll move item 14B to be heard in front of 14A. That means that we'll hear the second reading on Carson City and Roventini LLC application to extend the tentative planned unit development map. That'll come first under item 14, and then 14A will be after that. And then we're going to pull from the agenda today the item, and I'm trying to look for it right here, about 17A. That's the B City USA. I think everybody wants to make this happen, but there's some nuances to the words that we need to work out regarding certain things like pesticides and things like that, which the parties are going to go talk to and see if there's a way where we can finesse this so that everybody gets happy, because I think everybody wants to see us do something like this, but we can't hamstring ourselves, so we need to look through and have a little bit more further discussion on that, but we will do it. I don't want people to think that, we're trying to put this, just do it. Hopefully we're going to get it worked out. Okay, so any other changes other than what I've mentioned? Any board members? Okay. Any member of the public want something else pulled off the consent agenda? Don't see any. All right, then unless there's an objection, we will take the agenda as published with the changes of moving 11B and 11C from the consent agenda to individual discussion. We'll move 14A or 14B to be heard before 14A, and we'll pull the B City USA 17A for further discussion later off the agenda today. Okay. Unless there's objection, that's what we will do. All right. Hearing none, we'll go forward. Okay, now let's take up item number 8, a good way to start the morning here, along with what Pat Propster's got us started with. Let's all move down to the floor and talk to Gil Yannick. Gil, come on up. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Okay.
Today is a special day for Carson City. We live in a blessed community where we have a lot of folks, Hope was talking a little bit, earlier, and so was Pat Propster about, we're proud of our city, we're proud of what we do in this community. We want to make it look like, the best it can be. We take a lot of pride in it. And we're not talking just about the elected members of our community here. We're talking about the community members who daily stand up and make Carson City a better place to live, work, play, and just raise a family and have some fun. And one of those very strong individuals is here with us today, Gil Yannick. Gil has been served Carson City for
21 years.
21 years, 17 years worth of wildlife stuff. But we've been on the Wildlife Commission and done other things with for 17 years. And I'll always remember, one of the things that, town Carson City, we don't have much of a sage grouse population, but Gil was on worked years on, was a member of
The governor's sage grouse.
the governor's sage grouse, on the bi-state sage grouse for years. And when I got appointed by the governor to be on his advisory commission for the greater sage grouse, Gil was the first person I reached out to, came down to me, who gave me an introduction to, what is all this about sage grouse, what the history is, where we're going with it. And he's just been a tremendous member of that committee, and he's been a tremendous member of the wildlife board in Carson City here, and other things. So, Gil, on behalf of a grateful community, this was kind of you. You can put this on your wall. How about that?
About 5 spikes.
All right. This is a Carson City Certificate of Appreciation to Gilbert Yannett. On behalf of the community of Carson City, thank you for 17 years of dedicated service to the community and the advisory board of managed wildlife. Your efforts have contributed to the livability and overall success of Carson City in the community with an unparalleled quality of life being this day, September 6th, 2018. Signed, the mayor. On behalf of all of us, I'd like to have you, Dad, I want you to say a few words.
Thank you is not really enough to put into one word what 17 or 18 years on the advisory board have been. It was an introduction not only to the wildlife here in Nevada, but to the community, because I, like a lot of people, migrated here from another state, and there was a lot to learn. And they all looked at me as the new member on the board, and they said, "Oh, you're retired. You can go to the meetings on Friday and Saturday." So over the last 17 years, I've been through 12 counties, 17 different cities for meetings, and not including when you talk about when the governor at the time went to all the mayors of the counties in Nevada and said, "I want you to appoint somebody to be on the governor's sage-grouse conservation team." Well, guess who got the call? So I learned a lot about Nevada and California driving back and forth between the different meetings, but it was a very worthwhile effort. We did a lot. We accomplished quite a bit, and as it's sad that we have such a small population. We don't have any sage-grouse at all in Carson City County, but the state, and we've, unfortunately, due to a bunch of the recent fires, we lost over another 10,000 prime acreage of sage-grouse habitat. So, we'll get up in the plains and we'll drop seeds and we'll cover them up and we'll try to, replant that particular area. In addition to what I do for the city on the wildlife, I'm chairman of the finance committee for the State Wildlife Commission. So I'll still stay in close touch with the boys down here because I'll be watching what they're spending their money on and attending the commission meetings. I'll be on that side of the microphone for a change, and you're not controlled by the open meeting laws anymore. So it's going to be interesting. There is somebody that I really need to share this with. This isn't all my effort. My beautiful wife, Annette, has really come through.
Come on, Annette.
She's a little bashful. She's not a little outspoken like I am.
No,
but
he is.
This young lady here has made a lot of this possible, putting up with the days that I go away to places like Dyer, Caliente.
He actually enjoyed Dyer, by the way.
Dyer was not too bad. It really was fun after you got there. But it's been through her help and support that I've been able to spend the time helping the community in every way that we possible. I think one of the first things I started was being a volunteer income tax preparer over at the senior center. I'm still doing that, it's a habit for me, I guess. But
you could do mine next.
I just finished mine. So I owe a lot to my wife. She's comes through every time I can't find something, or I don't know this. Can't get this spreadsheet to work. I go to the expert here. So she's really a very valuable part of this operation. So
Thank you.
All right, look at that. All right, come on up, Annette. Put that up. Come on. You're going to be in the picture. Come on, Annette. No, you're going to get. We're going to get.
And you're leaving too. Where am I going to go to when I complain about the creeks and stuff like that? No! Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
All right, we're now on item number, we'll take up the consent agenda. If everybody's okay with the rest of the consent agenda with the exception of 11B and 11 Charlie, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with those exceptions.
I move to approve the consent agenda consisting of items 9 and 10. Yes, 9 and 10.
Second.
And 11A.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Thank you. Okay. Let's now take up item 11 Bravo. Who's going to do that? Dan? Mr. Stuckey? Come on up. Got some help this morning. Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Board. Dan Stuckey, City Engineer for the record. I'm joined here by Tom Grundy, who's the project manager for the South Carson Complete Streets project. So you'll be seeing a lot of us over the next year as we come back to the board for updates on the project. But wanted to introduce you to Tom, and many of you, I'm sure, already know him.
We see him everywhere.
Yeah, he's a busy guy.
Code Red. I get these messages. I'm in the middle of a meeting, and here Code Red, man, Code Red. You answer, well, it's just Tom. Telling me he's going to flush a fire lane here or there.
Yeah, nice. That's right. I forgot about that. So, the item before you is a contract with Innovative Contracting and Engineering to provide independent cost estimating services for the South Carson Complete Street project. So, independent cost estimating services are typical of a CMAR project delivery method, construction manager at risk. And I know you guys are familiar with the process because we've utilized it a lot. But it's obviously not your traditional low bid type process. You hire a contractor or CMAR up front, and they stick with you throughout the design. And through that process, the city's providing an engineer's estimate, and then the CMAR has their estimate, and then the independent cost estimator will have their estimate. And it's a way to basically bring a fair market value at the end when you're negotiating price to the project. And like I said, we've used this on the wastewater treatment plant as well, those projects. So it's very standard for those projects. And I did want to make a correction to the scope. There was some language in there that referenced the 70% design milestone. That is incorrect. It should have referenced 60%. So staff will make that changes with the consultant, and we'll get that revised after the board meeting today. So if you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Anybody? Everybody okay here with that change? Okay.
I'll make the motion.
Motion's in order.
I move to approve contract number 1819-098 with Innovative Contracting and Engineering to provide cost estimating services for the South Carson Street Complete Street project in an amount not to exceed $144,660 to be funded from the Infrastructure Tax Fund.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Are we on electronically now or not?
No.
Oh, yes.
Mine's down.
Oh, that's why you're not hitting motion buttons. Okay.
I can't go either. No, I'm not on. We have electronic issues, folks, so a couple of us aren't on up here.
John and I are on.
We're on.
Okay, well, that's all right. All right. So watch that vote.
Yeah.
All right, let's take up the next one. Let's go to 11 Charlie, Kimberly Horn, roundabout.
Yeah, so this is a contract with Kimley Horn. They're a multidisciplinary engineering firm for the South Stewart Street roundabout for the South Carson Street project. So the scope of services, they'll be doing analysis of traffic volumes, intersection operation, evaluating of flashing pedestrian beacons, and then preparation of plans and specifications for the roundabout portion of the project. Just to give you an update on kind of where, I wanted to give an update just on where we are with the project. As you know, we won the Tiger Grant in the spring. City staff, there was kind of a pause. We were going with design, then there was somewhat of a pause because we wanted to talk with the federal DOT and understand the Tiger Grant and how it affects South Carson. So we got all of our ducks in order there, and now we're basically going to be, after today, we would have all the design team on board to move ahead full speed with the project. 30% design will happen at the beginning of October, I believe, and then we will be back, just like we did with the downtown projects, for 30, 60, 90 updates to you all, and then as well as the RTC, RAC, and any of the other funding agencies, I guess. So just a little history on the roundabout, too, on that. Since the inception of the South Carson project, a roundabout has been considered. It has been, when Kimley Horn actually did the corridor study about 1.5 years ago, and about 4 or 5 locations were pitched during that corridor study and communicated to the public. The public was in support. When city staff came on board, when new city staff, myself, Lucia, Maloney, we looked at the corridor study. Before we wanted to kickstart design and really commit to a location, we hired an independent traffic engineering firm, Traffic Works, to really evaluate, go in a little more detail than the corridor study, and look at the different locations and where roundabout made sense. I attached that as late material to the agenda item today, so that really summarizes kind of the thought process through that. The Stewart roundabout was selected as the preferred location for the roundabout, and for a number of reasons. One reason is there's ample right-of-way there. A roundabout takes a lot of footprint, and so with the frontage road further down south, it kind of makes it tricky on how to accommodate a roundabout. So it's a good place for one with right-of-way. The analysis showed that we feel like it will improve traffic operations and circulation in that area. It also, from a future standpoint, could be a future connection to Curry Street, which is something that we've looked at for a long time. That won't be included with this design, but the design will take into account that potential future connection. So those were the 3 primary reasons, and there's some more in that document, but why we're going forward with the Stewart roundabout. And that's basically a summary of where we're at, the roundabout location, and this contract. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Dan, can you just give us a brief update, too, on the Appian interchange, the realignment of Appian and Snyder?
Yeah, so my understanding is it basically would take everybody to get on board, all the adjacent property owners to get on board with that realignment, and that hasn't happened yet at this point. It's still something that's being considered in the future, but at this point, it hasn't happened. So that's kind of where we are today with that. We are looking at some potential modifications there at that area with this project, but it won't be at this point a realignment at this point in time.
Yes, on the roundabout at Stewart and Carson, has this been communicated to the folks in California who own the Carson Mall? And if so, what do they think about it?
I don't believe it's been communicated directly, but it will be. We have an extensive public outreach where we'll be going down and communicating with the people along the corridor. We also have identified, I believe, like an informational meeting for the public, probably held here sometime in November, I believe, for our schedule. And then we'll also have, I think, around the 60% design stage, another opportunity. We'll probably reserve the brick downtown with the engineers and the plans, and businesses and people can come in and more, get more specific into the plans and talk with the engineers and talk about how it might impact their business. So there is a pretty extensive public where they will be notified and informed of the roundabout.
After today, would you communicate with them? Because they have a lot of tenants there, and it probably will affect
Absolutely.
the
Yes.
mall. Is there any thought to whether, on the city's part, on whether this will enhance things at the mall or detract or whatever?
I think, like I said, I mean, roundabouts are a proven safety measure from a transportation or traffic standpoint, but also more efficient traffic operation there for circulation. So I think it will benefit the mall. The other thing I forgot to mention that's a big factor with the roundabout location is we've talked about a gateway to downtown and signage and landscaping and something where people are driving in from the south that really is, hey, we're approaching downtown Carson City. This is a great opportunity with the roundabout. We can do some really neat landscaping features and signage. And so it kind of has that gateway feature, and that's another benefit of the location.
Thank you.
Yep.
So just for this, the only issue that I have is generally, would we not look for a public outreach before we go into the design? Because once you start design, it's pretty hard to back up. And so my concern is that the public didn't have an opportunity for any input about a roundabout at Stewart because it didn't come to us through the RTC where they're used to seeing it come, and then they would be watching those agendas. And so I'm just wondering process-wise why we didn't just run this to the RTC first so the public realized we're going to be putting a roundabout at Stewart Street. So I'm not opposed to the roundabout. I just question whether or not we had enough public outreach to make sure we're moving in the right direction and going to do the design that fits the community. So it's just a general question.
Yeah, so you're right, we didn't take it to RTC before, but I will go back to the corridor study where there was 4 or 5 locations prioritized of where roundabouts were going to potentially be. Those were relayed. There was 2 public meetings with that corridor study where the public voted on certain street cross sections as well as gave feedback on roundabout. And so in that corridor study, that was talked about, the roundabout locations at those various locations. There's even comments in the back referring to a Stewart roundabout from the public. So it was, although not through RTC, it's not a new idea that the public has not heard of or been communicated with. There was always potential for a roundabout at Stewart, and that was communicated during those public meetings during the corridor study.
So let me just ask this a little differently. Is this going to stall the whole project if we just put this on the next RTC agenda? So the public had just an opportunity and then we just brought this back at the next board meeting? Do you have a whole bunch of synchronized events that this would derail? Because I'm not trying to derail the project. I just really feel strongly that this is a major road change that we're going to make there, and I just want people to know it, that's all. But if it's going to derail an entire segment of processes.
Yeah, so since we're designing as a city, we've been progressing the project, and the roundabout is really the last piece of design, and they are coming on a little bit later, so they're going to have to play catch up to the rest of the design team. So I would say a delay does jeopardize schedule a little bit as far as delays there, just because they're the last piece that's coming on, and like I said, 30% I think is due the end of September or early October. And pretty much everybody else on the design team is going to hit that fine, but Kimberly Horn's going to have to play catch up and come in and get on board with that schedule. So as far as impact to schedule, there would be some impacts, and we are going back to RTC at 30% to discuss the 30% design and roundabout and all that. So it will come back.
I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's a done deal when it comes. Once you design it in, it's done. I mean, we can talk about landscaping, we can talk about some other things in the 30, 60, 90 design, but once you put a roundabout in, it's going to be in. So that's my true concern.
No,
that's not one you pencil out at the 60% design.
Yeah.
You don't take it out.
Well, and I guess the last point I would say is, we did hire that independent Traffic Works to look at this because we didn't want to commit, and that's engineering basis. He's an expert in roundabout design. He brought his engineering data-backed knowledge to come up with a preferred location. So it's not like we're just pulling it out, randomly. I mean, there's a lot of thought, and that's why staff did want to go through with that additional step before we just headed into design and really get a expert on board to really look at those locations and pick a good one.
Well, and I really want to compliment staff for actually going to Traffic Works, and I think that you're making a much better decision than Sonoma. So I do want to, again, I want to comment that I think this is superb data and it really helps us make good decisions. My sole concern is just the public. I always want to err on the side of public comment, so thank you.
Cool.
Dan, can you just lend a little bit of clarity on what's involved with the connection to Curry Street ultimately if the roundabout goes in at Stewart?
Yeah, so it would involve communication. It's U.S. Forest Service land that goes through there. Staff, I mean, I think that's been talked about for decades is what I understand. I mean, I haven't been here that long. So those conversations have happened in the past. There's been recent conversations where the idea has been pitched. So there would be some work there. And that's why we don't want to include it, have it be included. We still think it'd be a great feature regardless if that connection happens. But talks will need to continue. Even with this design, we'll have further talks with the Forest Service. And I think, you know, potentially it could happen. And again, that's something that's always been looked along on that corridor is more connections there to Curry Street. So definitely something we'll continue to work on.
I'm not sure I fully understood that answer. Are you saying that the feds could make this a 3 intersection by saying no, or you say it's still in communication with the Forest Service?
Yeah, so it would be a 3-legged roundabout. So in the future, we'll design the 3-legged roundabout. So in the future, when hopefully that connection can be made, they would just add a 4th leg to the roundabout that we'll be doing with this project. So it'd be a 4-legged roundabout if that connection to Curry happens.
So in other words, we won't know until later. And how much later? How are those talks going?
I mean, we're early on in the process. I think Forest Service's support, there's just details that need to be worked out. And at that point, you know, as far as, you know, they want to see layouts of how the design's going to work. They have a parking lot there, obviously, that they don't want to lose a bunch of parking spaces. So, I mean, there's stuff to be worked out like anything. But, I mean, like I said, to have that potential in the future, and this design would accommodate that future potential if it were to move that way. But talks are going well at this point.
No guarantees.
There's no guarantee.
It's movement, just the talks are going forward. I mean, because we've had it where nobody's talked. I mean, we've been talking to the wind. Okay, Brad.
To ourselves.
Dan, is it possible to do some preliminary engineering on the wetlands mitigation for that 4th leg at the time that we're designing the roundabout? Is that part of the plan?
We can do that. I think we'd like to keep anything to deal with the wetlands and outside of our footprint away from the South Carson Complete Street project, just because with the Tiger Grant, once you start talking about wetlands and outside of your right-of-way, it complicates the grant. And so I don't, we could do it on the side as part of a kind of another like preliminary type engineering to explore that. And I think we are kind of looking at some things internally. But as far as like lumping that in officially with this project, I think we'd want to avoid that.
Are you saying that we won't need to do any wetlands mitigation to do the roundabout?
Not for the 3-legged roundabout. There wouldn't be, because it's not impacting the wetland area.
Okay.
But if that future 4th leg, yes, if that were to go, we would need to do some.
Any other questions of the board? Public comment? Anybody? All right, let's see where this goes. Somebody want to try a motion?
I move to approve contract number 1819-099 with Kimley Horn to provide design of a roundabout at North Stewart Street for the South Carson Street Complete Street Project in an amount not to exceed $114,071 to be funded from the Infrastructure Tax Fund.
Second.
There's a motion, a second under motion discussions. Go.
So I'm only going to vote no, not because I'm not in support of your project, but I really believe in processes. And to me, public comment is the most important thing we have as a community. And so I just don't think we have RTC in less than a week and could be right back here. So if it was really going to delay you months and all of that kind of stuff, I would vote yes. But I really think this could have easily just gone to RTC. So I'm going to vote.
John?
Yeah, I'm going to vote yes, but I don't particularly and totally agree with my colleague to the right that we can't take it back out. So I just want you to realize that this board is the ultimate, and if it gets to the point where it causes any problems, why I might reconsider that vote. We all up here act independently, and I think you can put something in and up to the 30% stage, you can take it back out. I don't expect that to happen. So I'll vote yes at this point, reserving the right to say, no, I don't like this later. Thanks.
Okay, anybody else on discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
No.
Okay, did you get, Kathy, you got it? All right, 4-1. All right. Tom, go back to Code Red, but, don't do any while we're in the board meeting here, because all the bells start to go off. Thanks, all right. All right, let's take up, finishes that. Let's take up item 13. Go.
Good morning. Nancy Paulson, City Manager. So this item is to appoint Jean Perpich, which I want to introduce you to Jean Perpich. I think most of you already know her. This is for a 4-year term beginning on September 7th, and is with a starting compensation of $75,000. So the city received 6 applications for the public guardian position, and the selection panel, which was made up of 2 board members, the public guardian from Lyon County, the deputy public guardian from Washoe County, and the city manager. We all reviewed the 6 applications and chose the top 4 for interviews. And Jean was selected unanimously to be recommended as the public guardian. She has extensive experience in banking, strong leadership skills, is a certified guardian with the National Guardianship Association, and is a very active member of our community. So,
Jean, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to do this? And
thank you so much, Mayor Bob and Board of Supervisors. I am very grateful to be here today in my journey. And part of why I have followed in this path is it has always called to me. When my husband was in nursing care and hospice, I was recommended by many of my friends and family to go into this business, and I said, no, I'm a banker. I am really not going to do this. But I did get licensed at the urging of friends and family, and it's always called to my heart very deeply to serve people in the community this way. And I feel very honored and humbled to have the opportunity to serve the community here, which I love so much, at the state capitol in Nevada. And I feel that my father and my grandparents and my mother, those before me who left me a great reputation, I hope I can live up to that.
well, Jean, I remember during the interview, you come with a breadth of experience, not only just in the guardianship arena, but in the finance arena, in accounting arena, which is very, very valuable when you're dealing with other people's affairs and effects. Anyway, you have a broad base of knowledge and understanding about what's going on here. And you were asked also, I think, during the interview process, how many open cases we have, and we have somewhere between 70 and 80 open cases. That's a big load.
Indeed.
And all those take hands-on attention, monthly, daily. But you assured that, at least from our perspective, I think, as Lori and I were on that board, on that interview, that you know how to do that. So, Brad.
Jean, obviously I wasn't on the review committee that looked at the applications, but you and I have known each other for many, many, many years, and I can't think of anybody who I would rather have take this position. I think that you have the skills and the ethics to do this and do it well. So I'll be a little preemptive and say welcome aboard.
And I'd just like to say that I'm grateful that you applied, because I do feel that folks will be in good hands.
All right.
Can I say thank you very much for...
Well, you can in a minute. We'll see how the vote goes.
Well, the welcome aboard.
Yeah, well,
You're on the panel.
It's all right. All right. We have public comment on this. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. My name is Carmela Inman, and I'm a friend of Jean's. I just want you to know that Jean has the biggest heart anyone could ever have, and it keeps growing. She has helped me with my 85-year-old mother many times. She'll come over and babysit for me if my husband and I need to go away for a weekend. She's also a fantastic person. She's always growing and learning. We're in Toastmasters together, and we just keep joining more clubs and having more fun. And she doesn't hold a grudge. You know, we're both Italians from the East Coast. I'm a stubborn New Yorker, so I am so grateful to have her as my friend. And I know the community is going to really benefit from having her here. Thank you.
That's good. All right. I know we got Sister Marie back there hiding out, too. Did you want to say anything, or are you just being the...
Support Jean. I've known Jean she's a member of our parish.
I don't know if you heard that, but she's one of your supporters, Jean. So, oh, come on up, Sister Marie. I know...
Lady in the green there.
Oh, we got somebody else, too. Okay, all right. You didn't know I was going to call you up here, did you?
I know. No, I don't.
How could you come and we not talk? So.
Thank you. I've known Jean for a long time, and I work with the seniors in Carson City at St. Teresa's, and I do know we need a lot of guardianship. I've come across a few things this week with people that I think people took advantage of them, and I'm so happy that maybe I'll be able to work with Jean, that she can look into a few things for me. So I'm very grateful to be here this morning, and thank you for selecting her. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Marie.
All right, who's next? Come on up.
It's kind of neat.
Huh?
This is kind of neat.
Kathy? Push the button on. Kathy, push the button. There you go.
I knew Jean when she came here as an independent person trying to decide if she wanted to move here. And we had a little conversation, and I gave her some information on the city. I gave her a list of some places that she might want to volunteer, things like that. And I told her if she came back to the town to let me know. And about 6 months later, I get a call from her saying that she works at Wells Fargo. And she's here, and how could she get involved in the community? So right from the get-go, Jean was all about helping her clients at the bank, but more so in where she could help out in the community. And it just never stops with her. Sometimes it can be annoying to some people because she is persistent, and that's what you need. You know, you don't have a lot of that, and it pays off. It pays off. So I am so lucky to be calling her my friend and to be able to be here on her behalf. This is a great job for her. The banking industry is going to be sadder, but we're still going to have her.
Thank you.
Said it about right. Thank you. All right. All right, Astor. Kathy, why don't you? Yeah, go ahead. You want one more?
No, I go. I turn my light.
There's somebody else coming.
Yeah. She's going to need it.
Good morning. I know Jean when I came to Carson City 2003. I met her at her workplace in Wells Fargo. But through the friendship, she helped me to build my business in Nevada Green Institute, and she has that a way to see forecasting what will happen and what we need to do now type of intelligent, maybe with her training. And then she participated in my organization as a board member when we established it in 2010. And she cares about the community health. That's what she told me. And she cares about where the public, especially the elderly, should come out from their house and stroll, like downtown project example, be able to the opportunity to have time in meeting other peoples. And she was always worried about. So we need to have that. We need to have a place where our citizens, grandparents, with their grandchildren to come in, stroll in downtown and other places in the green space. She supports me a lot. She also gave me, says, Aster, you need to focus on that too, because that's very relevant for our citizen in Carson City. So I thank her for this, and then I thank you very much for choosing her. Thank you.
Right. Any other? Yes, sir. Oh, Victor, I was in to see you and you weren't there.
Where's our hamburgers?
Yeah, where? Come on.
Hi.
Did you bring my drink?
Is
that my Starbucks or whatever it
yes.
is? Go ahead, Victor.
Business and owner and operator in this beautiful Carson City. And I am happy for Jean, but also I am happy for the city and for the Board of Supervisors for choosing Jean as guardian. She's really very dedicated, hard worker. She worked very hard. I knew her for over 7 years at Wells Fargo, and she worked really hard. I mean, you can see her car in the parking lot 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes before opening of the bank. And even she knew that her work here is going to be even harder. So I don't know how she's going to manage this, but she'll do it. She's up to the challenge, and I am happy for her and for the city to have her on board.
Thank you, Victor.
Thank you.
All right. So you got a lot of people here, Jean. Anybody else?
We do have a international community. This is Helen.
Good morning.
Former district manager from Wells Fargo.
Good morning, Helen.
Good morning. I just want to say thank you for choosing her or nominating her to be a public guardian. I became a district manager for Wells Fargo in Carson City in 2013. And I live in Lake Tahoe, so I had no connection in Carson City. Pretty much when I came, she held my hands and she told me, I'll take you everywhere so that you can get to meet the people in this community. And during this time, I've been able to get to know her as a team member and also as a friend. She shared her passion about her journey and how she really admires and enjoys to support other people. And I was able to see that in action. She said, I'm going to take you to my church here in St. Teresa's. And I said, oh, I go to St. Teresa's in Tahoe. But she insisted, come and see this one. So very early in the morning, 7:45 Mass, I came here and I saw her really actively participating in this parish by reading, just really inspiring me and other people in this community with the acts of what she does and what she says. So I'm really, really glad, and Carson City is very fortunate to truly have her as a guardian. And you guys, this is the best decision you've made. She's a great person.
All right, Helen, thanks. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good picture there. All right. Anybody else? If not, we're going to take a vote, and then I think, yeah, we'll see where it goes here. All right, ready? Motion's in order. Supervisor Bagwell.
I move to appoint Jean Perpich as the public guardian for a 4-year term beginning on September 7, 2018 until September 7, 2022, and to set the starting compensation at $75,000 per year, and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Now you're welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
All right. It's a little unusual, board, but I think, you know, why don't we all, I know there people need to move here, but I think, why don't we come down here and get a picture, and all your friends can come up here and do that. We'll do it right here.
That would be great. Thank you.
All right, hang on. Got everybody here?
Not that I need to get down on the knee a little bit. I think that's her. She was. Am I walking? Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. Victor, thank you so much for being here. Molly, thanks. This is the flavor of the he owns the person. Thank you so much. I had Thank you so much.
There you go. Say hi to Jeff.
One more chance. Thank you. They want to swear me in.
Well, they got to swear you in. They'll take you. I want everybody just to kind of stay in place here for a minute, please. We're going to, Kathy's going to swear in Jean right now, so just stand in place. And I know we've got people that we've got time issues, but we'll deal with it.
Oh my goodness! Can you give me that? Oh, whip it right out. Okay. Give it to Brad. Did you get it?
Of the United States and the Constitution and government. And the Constitution and government of the state of Nevada. Against all enemies. Against all enemies. Whether domestic or foreign. Whether domestic or foreign. And that I will bear true faith. And that I will bear true faith. Allegiance and loyalty to the same. Allegiance and loyalty to the same. In the ordinance, resolution, or law. In the ordinance, resolution, or law. Of any state. Of any state. Notwithstanding. And that I will well and faithfully perform all the duties of the office. All the duties of the office. Of Carson City Public Guardian. Of Carson City Public Guardian. Which I am about to enter. So help me God.
Yeah, just.
Now you're in it.
Yeah, now you're in it.
Man, I don't think I did. Thank you, Jean.
Sorry that I preempted the meeting.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Now get to work. Yeah.
So everybody knows, board, we're gonna take up the Roventini one next, but at 11 o'clock we have kind of tentatively scheduled for board interviews for Planning Commission at 11, so we're gonna see if we can coordinate that this morning, but that's kind of what's on the agenda here. All right, so let's take up item 14, Bravo. Yeah, we have a disclosure. Supervisor Brankowski.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. In my private commitment, I am a partner in the real estate brokerage firm of NAI Alliance Carson City. In that capacity, my firm is working in collaboration with Mark Neufer, who is a principal in Roventini LLC, on an unrelated project in Douglas County where my firm represents the property owner and Mr. Neufer is providing consulting services. However, neither myself nor any other person in my firm is exercising any authority over Mr. Neufer in the course of his consulting services. Those consulting services are separate and distinct from my firm, and neither myself nor my firm have any employer, employee, or joint venture relationship with Mr. Neufer. I am making this disclosure in the interest of full transparency, but because I do not have any involvement in the dealings of Roventini LLC, and also because a reasonable person in my position would not be materially affected by this relationship with Mr. Neufer, which arises from a wholly unrelated project, I do not have a disqualifying conflict, and I will be voting on this matter.
Any other disclosures? Seeing none. Okay. Lee, Mr. Plemmel.
Thank you. This is Lee Plemmel, Community Development Director. This item is to adopt on second reading an ordinance amending the development agreement to extend the tentative planned unit development map known as Clearview Ridge from September. It would expire on September 6th of 2018. This change would extend it to September 6th of 2019. I've provided some late material. That's just more information about the background, but there's no new comments. I don't have anything to add, and we're recommending approval of the development agreement on second reading, adoption on second reading.
Public comment? Public comment? Seeing none, motion's in order.
Make it. I move to adopt on second reading Bill number 113, an ordinance amending the development agreement between Carson City and Roventini LLC as discussed and as published on the agenda.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Mr. Mayor,
right?
for the record, that ordinance number is 2018-10.
2018-10. All right. Now let's take up second reading on the sign ordinance. This is 14 Alpha.
Thank you. Let me introduce this item really quick. It's to adopt on second reading an ordinance amending Title 18 related to signs and specifically related to temporary banners, flags, A-frame devices, A-frames and other temporary sign devices, as well as to modify the definition of frontage of building to make the method of measuring the allowable sign area consistent between shopping centers and other commercial uses. with that end part. Of course, the major discussion on this has been with the use of banners, flags, and A-frame signs, and we've had a lot of discussion over between the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission, and this has gone to second reading. We came back and made some amendments, and this is coming back for second reading again. What I've handed out is some clarifying language to S6 under the exemptions of signs under banners that would clarify. I think at the last meeting the discussion was to put some language in that ensured that banners were not being used in lieu of permanent wall signage, except for during times, maybe 60 days was the specific motion, which we believe the intent was when a business first comes in and before they put up signs, they could have a banner up for 60 days, after which they need to have a permanent sign to continue using the banner. So I won't read, you have the handout there. Copies are provided on the back table, and I've handed a couple out already with this verbiage, but it essentially, it says two things: that when you first open a business, you have 60 days when you can have a banner without a permanent sign. After that, you have to have a permanent sign, except in situations where, because of construction, you have the sign down and we can allow you to have the banner up. So that's that change. This is second reading. However, I would note there are people here today to provide public comment on this and have further discussion about flags in particular, I believe, and perhaps some other other issues with the ordinance. Otherwise, based on the discussions that we've had to this point with the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors, or with this change that I've handed out now, it's been provided to the recorder from the District Attorney's Office, we recommend adoption of the ordinance with that modification.
Okay. Board comments? Yeah, board questions or discussion?
Lee, in our conversations going back and forth about the banners, I did forget one other item. If we look at page 13 of the ordinance, item T, subsection 3, a flag shall be securely attached to the primary structure in which the business is located. No freestanding flags are permitted. I believe we meant to add the language except with a special event permit, which would match the language that we used in item Q regarding banners previous to that. And I think that was where we, the discussion at the last meeting for flags and for banners was that they were prohibited except for with the special event permit.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, inflatables, not banners, but inflatables. So inflatables and flags. So it'd just be adding the language.
It's not necessary language verbiage. I think it could be in there for clarification. It's not necessary because with the special event permit, that is already allowed through that.
That I think.
But the verbiage can be added.
Yeah, I think that
per your recommendation. If you say it's verbiage added similar to in Q, then we can make that change.
Right, and you just delete the period after permitted and add the words except with special event permit.
Right. Understood.
Then they would match, and I'm not so concerned that staff doesn't know the intent, but for the lay person that's reading this, I think that clarification helps. And one of the things that we discussed about the change in language on item 6 was during the construction period. So if a business leases a space and they're looking at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months of construction of tenant improvements, can they put a banner up during that period? And the way the initial language, that would not have been allowed, but the way this changes, then up until the point till they open the business, they can have the banner up saying coming soon or whatever. Then they have 60 days after they open to get their permanent signage up, and then we put in the provision that allows, if the permanent signage has to be taken down for facade improvements or other construction, then we allow for that as well. So I think that this actually covers all of the scenarios that we could actually think of.
Yeah, go.
Actually, that brought something to my mind because the Carson Mall did a whole rehab on the existing businesses that were already open. So they actually had to put banners out because scaffolding and everything, they were painting and scraping. So can we take the, again, if they're in construction and can't have, you know, can't have it, then they can have the banner?
Yeah, we added the line in here, unless otherwise approved by the Carson City Planning and Community Development Director. So
if we put this on the record, right, I just want to put it on the record, we're meeting during a construction time, we're not going to not let them put a banner up. Okay.
Other questions, Ali, before we go to public? John, Supervisor Barrett.
At this point, I just want to say that, once again, I'll be voting against this unless we make a change, and I'm not going to propose that change. I'm just unalterably and totally opposed to A-frames, and if I thought I could get the votes, I'd probably try to take them out of this to the point where we wouldn't even have them in the downtown, and that would provide the same uniformity that the colleague to my right was looking for, but in a different way. I won't even make the motion, but I'm unreasonable on this issue, and I recognize that. So just go right ahead and do what you're going to do.
I don't think I'm going to say anything. All right. Public comment. Mr. Munnings.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again. Yeah, I know. She was a great lady. Yeah.
She had too much knowledge.
Yeah, too much. Go ahead, Gene.
You should have a paper in your packet that Lee should have put a proposal that was done from our landlord. When we met with Lee, he said to submit this to change X, take 2 out and change number 3 that it must that make it to 6 feet from the curb, because otherwise if you have it 6 feet, it could be somewhere next to a building, could be out near the street, so people, if they're walking, they'd have to weave in and out of the signs, especially downtown. That should all be, and it's very easy to enforce because anybody looking can tell if a sign's about 6 feet away from the curb and on any street. He can't be here because his wife is in the hospital and she's getting released today, this morning, and he said if he wasn't there when she got out, he'd have to wait a whole month to have decent toast.
Basically, just to clarify, I mean, the request is basically to eliminate the requirement that it has to be by the business and to allow it towards the sidewalk.
Yes.
Out near the sidewalk. No, well, under their suggestion, he's suggesting to delete the requirement number X2 that it has to be within 20 feet of the doorway of the business. Their purpose is to allow it to be placed near the sidewalk without obstructing the sidewalk.
Yeah, and this covers every business in town. It's the way it's uniform, whether they're located within 20 feet of Carson Street or more. But they still have to face Carson Street or address on it. You can't have one 2 blocks down and say, "Oh, I want to put a sign on Carson Street," because that's where I want people to see it. You still have to put it in front of their business.
So if somebody has a business that's 3 blocks off Carson Street, they could put it on Carson Street?
No. They have to be, if they're 3 blocks off, it has to be in front of their business.
Why not? I mean, if the idea is to show, to promote their business, and they like Carson Street, I mean, I'm just trying to figure out where this ends up going at the end of the day, because if that's an important part of attracting folks, then I can see why people 2 or 3 blocks off Carson Street wouldn't want to say, I want to put and that's happened before, I want to put an A-frame up on the corner. That's the problem with those issues. I mean, I get what you're trying to do, Gene. We'll see where it goes. I mean,
because it says in your thing, it says it has to be in front of the business, and that would be in front of the business, but it has to be at least 6 feet from the curb. or whatever, and not blocking a driveway or sight lines of sight.
All right. All right. Yes, ma'am. Go.
Let go. Okay.
You're live.
It's morning. I'm a night person for 30-some years. You know, just with regards to what Gene is saying, I'm Penny Huffstetler with his girl thing, and the business that he's talking about happens to be our neighbor. And from the street, with the trees and that, I can see where he wants to put it out near the street, because otherwise there's no way, his business is blocked. And we're next door, and from what I'm understanding is if we're an existing business, we cannot put any signage out.
This is why we did the flags attached to the building, so that you can be seen. That was exactly the reasoning behind that.
Attached to the building.
To the building, so you can be seen, and you can actually be seen better.
Okay.
That's the thought process.
Because with our signage the way it is, a nice tree blocks it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so what we've done in the past is our consignment sign, which is the only, has been in that, if you will, that flower bed. And now, according to the ordinances I read it, that will not be allowed.
Right. It's attached to the building, and it allows for visibility, and that's the thought process. Because I remember when you discussed the tree being in the way before, so that's why we amended things to include that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, in my case, being attached to the building won't help.
Well, I think the discussion was that you could have the flag on your roof.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Where
I
it
just
could be
have to
seen.
find one small enough. Thank you.
You have to worry about roof leakage.
Huh?
Roof leakage.
Oh, yeah, well.
May I ask?
Yeah, cool.
So, Jean, are you in concurrence with the ordinance that we're trying to restrict the number of signs? I mean, you agree that we really need to make sure we don't have a plethora of, a business having 5 signs out there and things. So that's really the point of this, is to, one, have something that's enforceable, readily readable by the public to understand what the rules are, to have them consistent. So are you trying to say you would pick an A-frame, or, again, you don't get both? And,
yes, and either or.
And either or. And so I guess maybe...
And only one per business. You can't have...
Right, one.
You can't have a dozen signs.
I think that's something we already talked about here. You're getting one. So I guess maybe my questions to the board in general is, I've been driving around just to... I always want to make sure we're not doing something that's really harming, or that we're really helping a situation. And so I really, as I drive around town, don't see some horrific area that has somebody taking advantage. And so one of the things I saw the other day at the Gold Dust is they have a motorcycle out near the street with a pennant flag. It says, "Win me." So under this, that would be prohibited. So I wonder again if we can talk about just one. Can they pick the A-frame or the flag sign, and they put it on near their property where it doesn't obstruct? You keep the obstruction part that says you can't block a driveway or blah, blah, blah. Are we being too restrictive here? Should we let that business decide one sign, put it where it's appropriate, so long as it doesn't obstruct? One.
First, just to clarify, it's not the Gold Dust, it's Slot World. Different ownership.
Oh.
So I just want to make sure, if you're going to put that out there on the record, make sure that people yell at the right ownership. Secondly, to answer your question, part of this with the A-frame signs is that the size of the A-frame sign that we're approving can't be seen if you're going more than 15 or 20 miles an hour. And that, we haven't brought that up yet today, but we don't want A-frames out at the street because it impedes traffic at the speed limits that the other parts of Carson Street and Williams Street would be at. That's a really important part of this. and why we allowed A-frame signs in the downtown area in the first place. The speed limit is slower and is more pedestrian oriented. If we start allowing businesses to put A-frame signs out on the main thoroughfares, it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause accidents. It's going to impede traffic. There's a lot of downside to being able to do that. We've already provided for them to put a banner up permanently instead of for 60 days. We've allowed a flag. So I think that we made all the accommodations that I'm willing to have, and as I said on the record at the last meeting, if we want to go down the road of talking about allowing A-frame signs on the street, then I'm going to change my position on this and vote against it for all A-frame signs. Because it just leads to a, as you said, a plethora of signage, and that's what we're trying to eliminate.
Looks like we're getting closer to me making a motion.
I don't know. Any other public comment before we move? Come on up, Mark.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, Board. Me personally on this entire situation, I've been watching it since May as far as how it would affect actually Carson Jewelry alone. And in response to the A-frames, they are significantly a positive force in the downtown area. They work very well as long as they're within the guidelines that are currently set forth, and that is adjudicated apparently from each business. And I really didn't see where the feather flag scenario was going to affect me, so I personally didn't pursue this. I just kind of watched it come through the thing. But this last Saturday, during a very successful wine walk over Labor Day weekend, as a matter of fact, lots of people, I have the ability to host the raffle at the end of over the latte, and the entire downtown area and the whole ambiance was just really positive that whole thing. And I was shocked at how many people within the DBA, just the DBA, hadn't even known that this sign ordinance was coming forth. And then I got a call last night from the president of the association, Mike Riggs, and his comment was that we might just consider just postponing this another 30 days just so that we might be able to get some more inference from some of the other businesses that really didn't even know this was going to happen, rather than choosing it today. And if we do choose something today, I would just very much consider that you just, once again, try not to shackle the hands of the entrepreneur, try not to limit the ability for them to create commerce, because as you've seen with the changes that we've had downtown, the ability for commerce has just, turned threefold, sixfold as far as getting the businesses filled up, getting the property owners getting positive rents on them, getting more situations. I mean, we have that challenge on Curry Street right now with all that construction, which is affecting a lot of people right now, more than people considered. We just spent a lot of money on downtown as far as the Main Street, and just putting another shackle, another chain right now, it's not really a good time. So if we could just delay it for a slight 30 days minimum, just to see who might come forward with other suggestions. Because I think if we tackle this feather flag thing correctly, we might be able to find a way to where we can maybe limit the colors that can be used on it, maybe limit the size that can be used on it, maybe limit the situation as far as how close it is from how far it is from the building. We really haven't had a lot of input from the public that I've seen until just recently. That I know Mike from Papa John's, he basically, the majority of his business is the feather flag scenario. It's where he is able to advertise. And I agree with Lori. I have driven around also and watched for troubled spots. You know what I mean? And I'm one of the biggest policers in the downtown area as far as if I see somebody that has a banner that's been on too long, I'll just kindly give them a nudge, say, hey, you know what I mean, that's not a scenario. So that would be the biggest thing.
Why don't we just let any sign happen and forget it?
Say that again?
Why don't we just let any sign, I mean, if that's the criteria, Mark, why don't we just let any sign happen wherever and forget the enforcement of it?
Right, and I agree.
What's the downside of doing that?
The challenge of that is because you're going to have abusers, and you have to put restriction to a certain degree on those abusers.
You can do it anywhere you want.
Exactly right.
What's wrong with that?
The challenge with that would be to where your neighbors aren't going to be considerate of it, to where, like you said, say I have a business on the corner of Carson and telegraph, okay? And my business is a coin shop. And there's a coin shop, like you mentioned, 3 blocks down on Nevada Street. And he decides he wants to put his A-frame in front of my business. You know, how would I consider that I'm paying triple the amount of rent that he's paying 3 blocks back, but now he can advertise in front of my business? Now, would I like that as a business owner personally? No, I would not. Would I suggest making changes to ordinances that allow it to happen? Yes, I would. But the fact that we are considering just completely eliminating a tool that somebody has to use to help their business, to me it's almost like telling a carpenter that shows up to build a building, you can no longer use a screwdriver, or you can no longer use a circular saw, or you can no longer use a drill. Say, okay, you have these tools that they're available to you, but we're going to completely not allow you to use that tool whatsoever. Doesn't matter what size it is, doesn't matter what color it is, doesn't matter what it's going to be used for, doesn't matter if it's right-handed or left-handed, you're not allowed to use that tool. And what you're doing, or what's being considered here, is the fact that we just completely eliminate a tool from the arsenal available to a business to prosper and be successful. So if we can just consider not eliminating that tool completely, that would be a step in the right direction. If we can consider, I mean, if we're going to go forward and say we're going to allow flags to be done, then we can move forward and say, okay, everything's great. If it's going to say, no, we're not, then I was shocked at how many of the DBA members didn't even know this was happening, let alone whole city-wide. You know, and I don't expect Lee to go out and write a letter to every single business. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many business licenses there are in Carson City. But a little more public comment and a little more public suggestions might be able to come up with a scenario to where is appeasing to the board and also appeasing to the people that it might be affecting more so than everybody else.
I think this is the 3rd or 4th time we've had it here.
Yeah.
And I don't know how else you say things.
Right, and as a personal business, I followed it along myself.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, and I don't, listen, Lori makes a good point. We want to encourage public participation, but the constant bite at the apple, saying, well, I didn't know what it was last time, so we're going to make this tweak, and then we make that tweak, and then it's another bite, and that doesn't go there. That's why I say, if we're going to go down that road, if that's where the business community wants to go down, then just eliminate the sign ordinance altogether and let anybody do what they want to do.
And that's a challenge.
And then you'll have a city that's got,
it'll be horrible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Where Gene's place is, you'll have 28 frames right up and down the road.
Yep. Yeah, no, yeah. Like I said.
You wonder, and people will just love that because they could read every one of those 20 signs.
Right. Yeah.
Going 30 miles an hour.
50 miles an hour.
Yeah, the easiest suggestion that Mike Riggs from the president mentioned to me, he wasn't able to be here, was just if we could just postpone it for another 30 days, make sure that we get everybody's insight, and then at that point make a final decision. If you make your final decision today, I would just hopefully suggest that we do it in favor of pro-business. Don't shackle us, don't limit us, do it as best you can to make sure that we can utilize all the tools that are available to us to use within limitations.
Sir, could you say your name for the record,
within limitations? Please? Okay, I got it. I understand.
Mark Schmidt.
Thank you.
I apologize.
Mike? Mark. I got Mark.
Good morning,
Come on. How's Papa John's? I know.
Mike Krubridge, Papa John's. I'm also a member of the Downtown Business Association. In fact, I have 2 businesses that are part of that association. I took my flag down at the beginning of last month because of the ordinance, and my sales dropped over $8,000 last month, which was almost 19%. I can't contribute all of that to the loss of the advertising, but I'm sure it had a big part of it. And to further restrict my ability to attract customers would hurt not only me as a business owner, but I only have 22 employees, but it would hurt them as well, their families. And I would remind this board that these are your neighbors, maybe even your family members that would be affected. If I am so affected by this loss of ability to advertise and attract customers, I'm sure other businesses are as well. And the small businesses, we may not pay as much sales tax as the auto industry, but collectively we probably contribute more to this community than any one entity. So I would ask the board if you would consider our request for a 30-day continuance. If you don't consider that, please consider the use of a single signage, either 6 feet from the street or 20 feet from the building. Please don't. I mean, I understand the need to regulate and keep our city beautiful, but we also do need the ability to attract customers to our business. And ultimately, this community needs businesses to be successful. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Brad.
Just some comments, and I'll address them to the board since this is under public comment now. This is the third meeting in a row that we have discussed this, and I've seen 2 notices go out from the chamber. So at this point, and it was in the appeal. So at this point, if the public doesn't know about this, I don't know what else we can do to try to inform them other than knock on every door, which is not reasonable. So currently, flags are allowed for a 90-day period, but I can drive around this town, 30-day period. But I can drive around this town and look at businesses where the flags have been out in front of those businesses for months and years. They never get taken down. So that's not in conformance with our current sign ordinance. The change that we're making is to say the freestanding flags out by the street have to go because they're everywhere and they're not in compliance now. But you can have a freestanding flag or a banner permanently rather than just for 30 days. But it has to be attached to the building. We're also saying you can have an A-frame as long as it's within 20 feet of the front door of your business. So I feel like we are providing adequate opportunities for the business community to have permanent advertising rather than the limited periods of time that we have in our ordinance now that are not being complied with. So this allows the city to be able to enforce an ordinance that becomes more simple and at the same time allows the business community to have permanent signage and not be worried about a compliance officer coming by and telling you that you have to take your flags down. So you can put some more thought into your advertising and decide what it is that you want to advertise and where you want to put that one banner or flag, as well as your A-frame sign. So we put a lot of time and energy and thought into designing this ordinance and coming up with the language that accommodates both sides of this equation. So at this point, I don't understand what continuing this for another 30 days is going to be. I agree with the mayor. What's going to happen in 30 days is that more businesses will come forward and will say, I didn't know about it either, so let's continue it for another 30 days. We've been talking about this for months. So, you know, I mean, I just want the board to think about those items, that it's not like we just pulled this thing out of the air and are making a random decision. We put a lot of time, energy, and thought into trying to do this right.
Okay. Any other public comment? Anybody? Mike, you want to add anything?
If I may ask, how does this change an ordinance to affect banners on the back of a building?
As long as it's on yours, your business. Which would be helpful for you.
Is there a 30-day limit on that? So as I understand the current regulations in place at the moment, if I put a flag out for one day and then have to remove it because of the inclement weather, I'm not allowed to put it back out again for 90 days?
For the freestanding flags, you can, for a 30-day period, you can have it and choose to use it within that 30-day period as you need, but it's only for those 30 days, and then it's 60 days off. It's 30 days within any 90-day period. Currently. Yeah. And I would just mention on the banners, so they are this ordinance would eliminate the 30-day time limit on banners, but there would remain to be size limits on that banner, which you could refer, based on your size of your business, refer to the code for that.
So I do think it would help you, Mike, because you'll get visibility coming the other direction that you've never had a sign, so long as your landlord will allow you to put the banner there. We can't control that part. I mean, that's the landlord's responsibility, not ours, but we don't mind if you do it.
Yes, and as I mentioned, I personally have been following this significantly since May, and the DBA, Downtown Business Association of Carson City, does definitely appreciate all the time and effort that the board put into to make sure that language was as best as noted, but it was just kind of shocking how many people didn't really realize that it has been happening throughout this process. And whatever help the DBA can offer to the board and the city staff to even police our own with under, just feel free to reach out. Be more than happy to step out and knock on a couple doors.
Okay. All right. Any other public comment? Signs, the bane of existence.
I'll just say.
I didn't say, what I said was signs, the bane of existence.
Yes. I'll just comment.
Comment.
You know, I just want to comment that this one, I do believe, unlike the prior one that we just discussed, where I didn't think the public had a chance, I have to tell you, and actually a few of us were at a event last night, and it's really community engagement was really quite the discussion, is how do you get people to know, because I think we do our job. We post them, we send them out to the chambers, we send things to the DBA, we talk, all of us I know here, talk to people in the community, so how do we get them engaged early enough in the process? Because I feel bad when we take an action and then we get a bunch of emails how upset they are, like they didn't know. So I welcome any suggestions or thoughts on how we have more public engagement earlier in the process. But I have to tell you, I think this one, I think we've done this one almost until we hurt up here, you know, and we're trying to do the best that we can. So I do appreciate your comments, though, but I want you to know I'm okay with moving forward only because I think we've had several public comment periods.
And as Mr. Mayor said, I've been privileged to have multiple businesses, multiple properties within Carson City for over 3 decades now, and this is a continuous scenario that continually comes up, and I'm sure it will come up again. So we do appreciate all the efforts, and if changes need to become, we'd be more than happy to listen and offer more input also. Thank you.
You know what else, too? We can implement this, and I do want to let the public know, it doesn't mean we got it all right or all perfect. The public can always come back next year or 2 years from now and say, hey, here's what worked and here's what didn't work. Nothing ever stops you from presenting changes to any ordinance, not just signs. So I want to say that, too, that I don't know that we get everything right, but I know this board tries hard. And so we would welcome comment later, too.
If I may make one more comment, I understand that the board is, and I appreciate that you do everything you possibly can. Please understand that most businessmen cannot be here 8:30 in the morning. We do have businesses to run, or other things. I would have been here at the last meeting, however, I had a doctor's appointment, and so there are circumstances where business people may not always be able to attend these board meetings. So I just want to put that out there. Thank you.
All right. I think that's it for public comment. All right, board.
I'll make a motion.
Make a motion. We'll see where it goes. We can discuss
Ordinance
it.
is 11. Okay. I move to adopt on second reading ordinance number 2018-11, an ordinance amending Title 18, Appendix of the Carson City Municipal Code to amend regulations related to temporary banners, flags, A-frame signs, and other temporary sign devices as discussed and published on the agenda, including the change in language to item 6 on page 13 to be replaced with the language that was submitted as late material this morning, and item T, subsection 3, adding the language at the end of that paragraph, except with special event permit.
All right, there's a motion and there's a second on the motion. Discussion.
I'm just going to say I'm going to go with the Congressman Amodei rule of 95% of this I think we got right. Yeah. And I do think potentially we might not have got it all, but I think we can give this a whirl and then see, you know, in a year or two if we really had an unintended consequence, and we can fix it then.
John?
Yeah, I would agree partially with what my colleague to my right said, except I think it's more like 50% right. I'm going to vote no.
Well, I think at the end of the day, for my own thought, you know, I'm very sensitive to what the businesses are saying here. And you have to weigh that against the other thing about what your community looks like and what we've seen happen with signage over the years and what it can do to things. So, you know, from my perspective, you know, signage issues can always be tweaked because there are different circumstances that come up all at different time. But it's an enforcement nightmare if we don't have something like this done. I mean, it's just an enforcement nightmare. And I, you know, Mark and Mike, you know, I agree that at the end of the day, these things could be self-policing, I guess, but they really aren't. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, if you know, if everybody had, you know, if they could be self-policing, it'd be fine. And then you do what I just suggested, just eliminate the ordinance and go down the road. But it doesn't work that way, and it's unfortunate. But so my own sense is that, you know, when you weigh the balance of what we're doing here, and I agree. Well, you know, we've had a lot of discussion about this, and I intend to vote for it. It's a step. It's not probably, as Lori says, it's probably not a perfect step, but it's a step. So we'll see where it goes and check it out. All right, on a motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. All right. 4-1. Did you get that, Kathy? All right. Supervisor Barrett, no. All right. All right, folks. Let's see. What do we got? Yeah, let's go do it. Then we'll take a break after. We'll get going here.
Sherry Russell, CFO. For the record, I should be quick. We've heard this a number of times. However, I will go over it really quickly. So recently on 8/15, we just completed the refunding of the $10 million 2000A water bonds, which at the end of the day, we saved $3.4 million in total. In order to get this large savings, we had to refund the bonds using the SRF program, which is connected with the EPA. One of the EPA's requirements was that the savings was to be put into a new shovel-ready project by the city. This $7 million that we're looking to issue will complete the final phase of the east-west transmission main, and it will satisfy the requirements of the EPA, basically. This starts the process of the bond issue, so this starts the clock for the 90-day petition period. We'll be looking at doing a first reading of the ordinance in November, and then adopting that in December with an issuance date of January 30th.
Okay. Board questions? Public comment? Looks like you might have done something right there, Sherry. Sorry.
Well, thank you. I did forget to introduce Duncan Burke with Sherman and Howard. He's here if you have any other
morning,
legal questions.
Anything to add?
Duncan Burke, Sherman and Howard Bond Counsel. No, I think Sherry covered it. So many questions.
Right. Bond Counsel, if I had my career to start again, I'd be one of you. I'd be one of you, man, I tell you. All right. Public comment, anybody? Don't hear any motions in order.
Resolution.
2018 R27.
27. I move to adopt resolution number 2018 R27, a resolution of intent proposing the issuance of and authorizing the publication of notices relating to general obligation limited tax water bonds, additionally secured by pledged revenues in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $7 million for the purpose of financing water projects for the city, providing the manner, form, and contents of the notices, authorizing the city manager or the city's chief financial officer to arrange for the sale of the bonds, and providing the effective date.
There's a motion in a couple seconds. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carried. Unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Good to see you. All right. Let's take 5 minutes. We'll move and see if we can. Let's take 5 minutes and we'll be back. We'll be in recess for 5 minutes.
Just straight to the...
bring the meeting of the Board of Supervisors back to order. Dan, are you ready? Who's doing the pipes? All right, we're going to take up item number 16 for an ordinance relating to sewer pipes, design criteria. What's wrong? They're not big enough?
Yeah, he wants more capacity. You got it in a nutshell.
Planning for the future.
That was good.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, that's actually a pretty good summary. But so this is the first reading of an ordinance related to sewer pipe design criteria. The municipal code change to Title 18 was approved at the Planning Commission in May. There was minor conforming changes that were later added to Title 12, and this was basically for consistency between Title 12 and 18 to make sure there was no conflicts. There's three primary reasons for this change. One is, when we evaluate our design criteria, we want to match industry standards. I did prepare 2 slides. I'll be quick because I know sewer capacity criteria is probably not #1 on your list, but I wanted to make sure I was thoroughly explaining it. So it's to match industry standards and best practices. It's to increase the factor of safety in our sewer systems and also make sure that we're planning well for the future and we're not stuck in a situation down the road where our system's over capacity and we have to spend a bunch of money to upsize. So it's just smart growth. So our current criteria, and I have a little cross section of a pipe, but our current criteria for all of our pipe sizes, basically we allow flows up to that top red dashed line there, so the 75% of capacity. What this change would do is for pipes that are 15-inch in diameter and smaller, we would only allow up to that middle line, so 50% capacity. And then for ones bigger than 15-inch, it would still remain the same as it is today. One of the checks that I like to do, and like I talked about, looking at industry standards, what's happening regionally here. You can see City of Reno is actually a little stricter. They only allow 50% on all pipes. Douglas County is essentially what we'd be going to, and then City of Sparks is very similar as well. So it would be in line with what's regionally happening here. And then just really quickly, why you do this. So, when you only have 25% capacity, that can be used up for a variety of reasons. One is just, like a surge of flow. You don't want to get to a situation where your sanitary sewer system is pressurized because you risk possible overflow scenarios, which is not a good thing, obviously. Also, as a system ages, the pipes cracked and joints offset and groundwater infiltration comes into the pipe and takes up some of that capacity. So you want adequate capacity to be able to handle future inflow and infiltration from groundwater. And then obviously there's blockages and buildup that happen too that take up some of that capacity. And then I hit on the smart growth. It's just making sure that, again, we're not stuck in a scenario 20 years from now where we're having to come back and upsize a pipe that should have been sized the right way in the first place. I have spoken with Aaron West with the Nevada Builders Alliance. I spoke with him on Tuesday. He is aware of this change. I mean, for them on their end, it could be a slight upsize when they're doing a subdivision or something on the builders, but it's bigger on our end probably than it is on their end. But that has been communicated to the Nevada's Builder Alliance.
Yeah, I talked to Aaron as well. I actually brought this to his attention to make sure that he looked at it. And for builders, it's a minor increase in material cost only. The cost to dig the ditch and backfill it and everything else is going to be the same regardless. This is a practice that the Water Subconservancy District has followed for years. While the ditch is open, try to upsize your pipe for future growth. So there's no downside to doing this other than the minor increase in cost to builders, but it really is minimal. So yeah, this is good long-range planning, and it's good to see us doing this.
Public comment? Seeing none, motion's in order.
Bill number?
114.
I move to introduce on first reading Bill number 114, an ordinance relating to sewer pipe design criteria as discussed and published on the agenda.
There's a motion and a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carried. Okay. Thank you, Dan. All right. Let's take up Fourth of the B City. We've removed for later discussion. Who's going to be doing the Weed Coalition 17B?
She's ready.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Marina Disbrow, and I am the Carson City Weed Coalition Coordinator. The coalition is comprised of federal, state, and local agencies who are all concerned with the spread of invasive and noxious plants. We also have several private homeowners involved with us as well. Daniel Anderson, the previous incumbent to my position, spoke with you all this time last year. He left in January, and I replaced him in March. So today I want to talk with you all a little bit about what the coalition has been doing since I came on board. I'm going to discuss why noxious weed control is important, treatments and outreach that took place this year, as well as ongoing projects for the coalition moving forward. So before I talk about why controlling noxious weeds is important for our community, I should first explain what a noxious weed is. So as per NRS 555, noxious weeds are any plant species which is or is likely to be detrimental or difficult to remove. So basically, there are currently 47 plant species on the noxious weed list. 7 were recently added last week, so for a total of 54. And the noxious weed list is put together by the Nevada Department of Agriculture. And so all of the plants on that list are required to be controlled by whoever the property owner is. So controlling noxious weeds is important because these plants result in less profit for agricultural industries. They severely reduce wildlife habitat. They alter hydrological conditions and ultimately increase fire frequency and intensity. So in 2018, the coalition surveyed and implemented treatment on nearly 750 acres. You can see there in the map all of the areas outlined in yellow are where we surveyed and treated, primarily along the Carson River, but a couple of inland sites as well.
Marina, tell us a little bit about what kind of treatment did you do?
So we do. That's really dependent on what kind of plants are in the area. So we have 2 main categories of plants that we treat. We have annuals and biennials, so those are plants that live for 2 years or less. And for those, if the infestation is small enough, we absolutely hand remove or do manual practices. We mow them before they go to seed, that sort of a thing. For plants that are perennials that live for 3 years or longer, we typically need to use herbicides because those plants have very extensive root systems, and so we need herbicides that are going to get down and kill the entire root system to effectively remove the plant.
Marina, those herbicides, how do they affect the bee and the butterfly habitats that surround some of these areas that noxious weeds exist in?
Great question. So we use herbicides that are not considered organic, and that is mostly because they're not as effective at killing the noxious weeds that we have. If we were to use organic products that may be more pollinator friendly, at least from a marketing standpoint, we're not going to be effectively removing the noxious weeds, which are ultimately detrimental to wildlife, including pollinator species. So for us, removing noxious weeds to benefit that pollinator and wildlife habitat is critical for us.
How long does the effect remain in the soil and affect the surrounds?
So that's all dependent on what kind of product that you're using, but typically there are the properties of the chemical can be in the soil for a couple of months to a year. It's all particular depending on what kind of herbicide that you have.
If I could follow up on Karen's questions, I assume that the application of the herbicide is by hand and not by mass spreading. So it's not that you're covering an entire area with herbicide, you're applying it directly to the invasive weeds themselves, correct?
That's correct. Most often we contract out with Dayton Valley Conservation District, and they put on backpack sprayers which have about 4 gallons or so of water and whatever herbicide, and they're walking around and spraying individual plants. If infestations are very, very large, they do have the option of driving a truck up close to the infestation and then dragging a hose out and spraying that way. But yes, only hitting the target plants is the goal. So this year we've also engaged in a number of outreach activities. We've had a couple of tables and booths at some outreach events, including Carson City Farm Days and the Progressive Agriculture Safety Day to spread awareness to the public that way. We've led a couple of guided hikes. June was also Invasive Species Awareness Month, and so we had a display at the library pictured there on the left, and we also had an article in the Nevada Appeal. But of all the events that I've collaborated on, I think my favorite was when I gave a presentation for Arbor Day. You can see the picture there on the top right. I was talking to a group of children about the impacts that noxious weeds have on our community and our ecosystems. And as you can see from the picture, they were pretty receptive to what I was saying, and so that was very encouraging. In addition to all of our planned events, we do make occasional house calls to the public if they are concerned with what kind of plants are growing on their property, or if they want to know more about how can I treat this plant or that plant. We do that as well. In terms of ongoing projects, we're engaging in a number of projects that are going to encourage the longevity of the coalition. So we're in the process of making a noxious weed management plan, which will have detailed prescriptions for some of the larger treatment areas in Carson City. We're also creating a noxious weed booklet for children, which will have coloring pages and a couple of activities to kind of get the word out to a younger audience that way. And of course, we're always looking for grant opportunities to increase our treatment potential and attend more outreach events. We are also participating in a biological control experiment. So the coalition doesn't always use herbicides to treat a lot of our noxious weeds. So this experiment is targeting Canada thistle, which is on the noxious weed list. It's one of the worst noxious weeds that we have here in Carson City. And so in collaboration with the Colorado and Nevada Departments of Agriculture, we're going to be using a rust fungus called Puccinia punctiformis. The picture on the right shows a couple of leaves with reddish-brown spots on the underside. Those are actually the spores. And so this fungus is specific to Canada thistle. It's not going to impact any surrounding plants. And so in a month or two, we're going to release the fungus on 2 sites. We have a site at Morgan Mill Preserve open space and Mexican Dam open space. And these sites are fairly small, so they're not going to impact recreationists whatsoever. And we're hopeful that this treatment will just be another tool in our toolbox for managing noxious weeds. And finally, I just want to stress that collaboration is certainly key when it comes to treating invasive and noxious plants. So pictured here is a bull thistle removal event that we held in collaboration with Muscle Powered. This took place in June, and we were targeting bull thistle, which is an invasive plant. And it was highly successful. We were able to gather nearly 20 large bags of bull thistle and get it out of the area. So we're looking forward to holding this event again next year and many more like it. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions, Supervisor Bonkowski.
Marina, I'm making an assumption, but I assume that you're focusing on the river corridor because that's the main transportation method for invasive weeds and noxious weeds. So in other words, if Douglas County doesn't control their weed problem, they end up in Carson. If we don't control ours, it ends up in Lyon and so forth down the river.
Absolutely. The river is certainly a huge vector for noxious weeds. But in addition, humans are a huge vector as well. If we're out hiking, we get noxious weed plants or seeds on our boots, they're going to go to the next place that we hike or back to our house, things like that. But the river corridor, as was in that picture, is certainly a huge area of our focus.
Other questions, Marina? That was a very good presentation, on point, not long. I have kind of a stupid question, but it's one that maybe it resonates with folks. How come weeds grow faster than plants?
Well, weeds are plants, but most of the time. So most of the noxious weeds that we have in this area originated from other parts of the world, right? So we have plants that are coming from Eurasia, from even harsher climates in the Great Basin, and introduced here, and they love all the water that we have, and they just take off. A lot of these noxious weeds have what's called allelopathic qualities, where they somehow insert some chemicals into the soil and make it more difficult for other plants to grow as well. They're very, very competitive. There's a number of studies documenting how invasive plants uptake more than their fair share of resources from the soil. They're smart. They have it all when it comes to outcompeting native plants.
John.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have to remind you that somebody once told me there are no stupid questions, and I learned something from her answer, so thank you.
Yeah. I don't know. I bet I've been doing a lot of weeding, so and I keep thinking, I said, I'd take you out a week ago. Now you're back. What's going on? I mean, maybe I didn't get everything or whatever, but anyway.
They're persistent.
Maybe I should have you come take a look and see what I'm doing wrong. All right. All right. Anybody else? Public comment? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Sean Gephardt. I'm the State Noxious Weed Coordinator for the Nevada Department of Ag.
Welcome, Sean.
And I just wanted to say, you guys are in a fortunate position because Marina and Lindsay have been doing a great job, and I just really wanted to support their efforts and be here today. So if there's anything that you guys can do to help them, it makes the state better as a whole.
Well said, Sean. Yeah. I mean, sometimes we look at, sometimes we can say, well, what's weed abatement, weed control, stuff like that? Why is that important to your community? You're hearing about it right now. So, I mean, and it's not an issue you want to overlook in making the community the best place to live. So, Marina, thanks, and thanks to all the folks that help you. All right. All right. Anybody else? All right. This is information only. So now let's take up item 17, Charlie. This is to possibly accept $250,000 Land and Water Conservation Fund grant and authorize fee title acquisition of 206 acres of the Timberline subdivision in VC Canyons. This is the Ham property. Before we go on, I understand there's a disclosure, Supervisor A, about it.
NRS 281A.420 requires me to disclose a conflict of interest and abstain from voting when I have a disqualifying conflict. I live in the Timberline area, which is located just north of the acquisition site. However, I will not be affected by this acquisition any differently from any other resident within the Timberline area, and therefore, in accordance with opinions issued by the Ethics Commission, this does not constitute a disqualifying conflict. In the interest of full transparency, I am making this disclosure, but I will be voting on this matter.
All right, any other disclosures? Seeing none. Ms. Bollinger, tell us why we shouldn't do this.
I don't have a reason you shouldn't do this. Yeah, the 206 acres for possible acquisition today is just another property that benefits the entire future of Carson City. The photo in front of you illustrates that it is a very visual part of Carson City, of our backdrop on the west side of town. So no matter where you are in Carson City, you can see this, even from our office on the east side. So located just north of the water tanks in Ash Canyon, south of the Timberline subdivision. Several trails throughout the area, popular with recreationists. There's a mule deer habitat corridor through this area, and these are the three main reasons. Trails, wildlife, and scenic view sheds are the benefits to protect this property for the future.
And how are we financing it?
We are financing it, fortunately, through the grant. When I was last in front of you in March, I asked for approval to submit a grant application, and we were #1 on the committee for reviewing the grant application. So we will receive $250,000 from Land and Water. In your packet today, there is a letter from them informing us that we have been awarded. It isn't the funding application itself. One error in that application, it says the National Park Service, NPS, won't review applications until September 2019. That was an error in the dates. They will be reviewing in September 2018. And then we are funding the other $250,000 plus closing costs, plus the other costs we have accrued with the appraisal, the phase 1, through the Quality of Life Open Space Fund.
Okay, all right. We'll take public comment. I think all of us, the board here, have received lots of electronic information regarding this agenda item. It's stressing its importance for approval. Is there anybody out there in the audience who wants to say, take the opposite side of that and say why we shouldn't do this? Okay, I don't see any. So, we'll see where this goes with the board. Unless somebody has a burning desire to testify, let's see what happens up here. All right. Board members? Motion's in order.
I move to accept a $250,000 Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, $250,000 city required match from the Quality of Life Fund Open Space, and authorize the fee title acquisition of 206 acres south of the Timberline subdivision in Vicey Canyon, assessor parcel number 007-091-66 and 007-293-29, from Gerald and Luana Ham for open space and passive recreation purposes, and authorize the mayor or named designee to execute all documents related to same on behalf of the city.
There's a motion, a second on the motion. Discussion, Supervisor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank all the people who are supporting this concept. I want to thank Open Space. I want to thank my predecessors on this board. I want to thank the people who passed before I even got here, the quality of life. This is what makes Carson City unique in the whole country. I had somebody tell me the other day that arts and culture are a primary reason that people want to come here. I add to that, I don't disagree with that. It is one of the reasons that my wife and I came here, because of the local symphony orchestra, just one of many. But open space is, for me, one of the biggest. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Budkowski.
And just for the record, before we vote, I did want to note that the property will be deed restricted for open recreation.
Correct. It will be deed restricted, and that is a requirement of the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant.
Right. So not only are we acquiring this for open space, but it will be open space in perpetuity.
All right. Anybody else? Who wants to do it? We're on discussion. On the motion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, passed. Well done, Ann. And to all you folks out there who've wanted to make this happen for a number of years, congratulations to all of you. As Supervisor Barrett said, it's a big part of Carson City, and I think that picture that Ms. Bollinger showed about, if you don't take care of your open space and your hillsides, you're going to lose that beautiful view we have of that area right up there. And it's a big part of, when you wake up in the morning, you look out, you look at those mountains, somehow they make you feel a little better. So keep it that way. All right. Now we'll take up the next one. Let's do the open space report. We'll now move to item 17D, as in dog, Delta.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't introduce myself on the first item, but for the record, Ann Bollinger, Open Space Administrator. The next item in front of you is to accept our annual report for 2017 and our work plan for 2018. And with us in the audience, I have our Chairman, Bruce Scott, and our Vice Chair, Alan Welch, is in the audience. And if you don't mind, I would like to pass it over to them so they can share from their point of view from the committee.
Get Alan up there, too. Come on. Don't be a potted plant back there.
Oh, gosh.
Be a potted plant up here. How's that? Good. Good to see you. Mr. Scott.
Mr. Mayor and members of the board, thank you so much for allowing us to have some time here to share our work program with you. It's a little bit dated. It does cover last year, and we're progressing very well moving forward. I would like to also recognize Donna Inverson, who's a member of our committee as well. We are a proud committee who is trying hard to do things that really help make Carson a better place, and we are excited about what's going on. What you just approved in terms of purchase is kind of an example, I think. We sort of have our eyes open now. We're not really out prospecting for more places and more locations, but we're trying to be judiciously able to respond when something comes up that represents a nexus of trails or an important element in the open space area. And very briefly, just as kind of a heads up, nothing really to report at this point other than to tell you that one of the other things that I personally am taking a great interest in is trying to work on the water side with respect to the Silver Saddle Ranch area and Buzzy's Ranch area. And we are working internally with Open Space, Parks and Rec, Public Works, to try to put together a program where we can acquire some water or gain some water that will keep those areas in cultivation for the long term. We have some short-term things in place right now through the courtesy and cooperation of Vidler Water Company, but we're working together to try to bring something forward, potentially grant application eligible. But just so you know, that's working out there. We're just not in a position where we have anything really to report other than just the fact that we are working on it, because it is a concern, particularly of mine, and I know of everybody's in the long term. So you have a pretty comprehensive report. We've been doing a lot of things. We have a great work program. We don't have enough staff, which in some respects isn't all bad because we have to pick and choose and be efficient. But at the same time, we're pretty pleased with the staff we have and how well they're doing and what's been happening in the program. So with that, we can go through details. I think you can read them as well. I am happy, and Alan, Ann are happy to answer questions or focus on specific areas. We are just pleased to be an advisory group to a board that has always been very receptive to the advice we bring you, and we try to do our best that way. So with that, I don't know, Alan or Ann, if you had anything to add. I'd be happy to answer questions or get into any other details you want. But thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, Bruce. I know you can trust this board to read every document that's put in front of them on these things. So Supervisor Barrett, John.
Bruce, you brought up staff. More park rangers, more what?
Well, a little bit at a time. Incrementally, so we can efficiently assimilate them. Park rangers have been a question, and we in the reorganization of the Parks Department, we consolidated. We still have some holes, and we still are working on details of having schedules that fit when the violators are out there. But I think it's a progression, and what we have in our upcoming budget, I think, is a step in a good direction. We'll be bringing you, I think, gradual recommendations to fit where we really need somebody. Our maintenance supervisor is on board. We're working. The AmeriCorps volunteers have been great. We're really going to be able to benefit, I think, from a volunteer coordinator. So, what I would envision is probably some very carefully recommended, items to you that might be occasional or a little bit of increase as we need it. But seasonal help, things that are less expensive than full-time employees, and at the same time, good management, good capability at the staff level. I think we've been able to build a pretty good staff with a pretty limited number of positions. And as a fairly conservative fiscal person, that's something that I'm pretty pleased with. I think that works quite well. And so it's a balance. Nothing glaring at this point, John, but I think definitely we'll be coming to you with gradual increases.
The mayor's right. We all read these things, but I look out 5 years sometimes or more. And so that's why the question is, where do you see it going? Let me put it that way.
Karen, Supervisor Abel.
The Michael Fagan property, where are we at in that process? I know what I read, but there's more than that.
We have another person in the audience today that can help us, Alicia Raban. She's the Executive Director of Nevada Land Trust, and as in the last item, she was really crucial to help us with the ham acquisition and expediting that. And she is also helping us with Michael Ham. So Alicia, if you don't mind, Michael Fagan, if you don't mind stepping up and helping provide an update. Thank you.
For the record, Alicia Raban, Executive Director of Nevada Land Trust. Thank you for your vote a moment ago on the Ham property. It's been our
thank you.
Privilege and honor to assist Carson City and the Open Space Committee with this high priority in such a short amount of time. It's been a heck of a lot of fun.
We wouldn't have been able to do it.
You're welcome.
Right?
You're welcome.
Yeah.
With regard to the Fagan property off of Highway 50, we are expecting the appraisal to come back here within the next 2 weeks, and so we'll be moving forward into an agreement and perhaps looking at a similar construct as with the Ham acquisition to do an assignment of that agreement at close. And so right now, all systems go. I'll have a lot more information in about 2 weeks.
It's a big deal, too. It's a big deal. All right. Supervisor Monkowski, sorry.
I want to thank staff and the committee for a very comprehensive report. It's good to get the information this way so we can see exactly, what you've been up to and what you've been able to accomplish. And reading through it, there was just one item of note that I found very interesting. It's on the Carson River Mercury Superfund site that you were a speaker on for that tour. And I'm doing some work out in Lyon County in this site, and I had no idea how extensive and large this area is. So I just wanted to, say on the record that this includes Washoe Lake. It starts at Morgan Mill Road in Carson and runs out the corridor, includes Lahontan, the Newlands project. I mean, it is a very large area. If you look at the canyon, 341 Canyon, where Silver City, Gold Hill, Virginia City are, and then coming down 6 Mile Canyon, there were over 200 mill sites that contributed mercury downstream. It's just phenomenal when you go to NDEP and you start looking at all the documentation that they have on this site. And I've lived here for over 40 years, and I had no idea until just recently when I started working out there.
Quite a history on the Carson River and that area. Speaking of history things, not this last weekend, but the weekend before that, I went on a tour of Clear Creek with Lincoln Highway, and of course we ended up at the top where there were some people, runners and others, using the kind of a bootleg trailhead up there to get into the area. It reminded me of the importance of connectivity and what that area means. And I think you're going to see, and Ann, you probably know, your open space folks probably know that, they're trying to make a big celebration out of the Lincoln Highway, which is a highway that went all the way across the United States, that was used to transport military vehicles and munitions across the United States. Clear Creek Grade, the old road, is part of that Lincoln Highway. It's part of the history. And talking what Brad said, how many people remember that there was a poorhouse down there where Fuji Park is? Mm-hmm. How many people remember that there are 2 graves from 2 veterans down there who were in that poorhouse that are in Fuji Park? I mean, those things, you don't see until you go out and you take a look around. It's our own community. I felt myself, I kept thinking of, I've lived here too, most of all my life. Yeah, and you look at it and you say, well, did I know that? And I just lost it. But, there's lots of things out here. So keep your eye on those things. And I think you can trust this board. We're all looking at the same thing. So we get along well. Good. All right. All right. Anything else? All right. This is Alan, did you want to weigh in? Anything? You're okay? All right. All right. Motion's in order.
Okay. I move to approve the annual report for 2017 and approve the work plan for fiscal year 18-19 as submitted.
There's a motion and a second on the motion discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ready? Carried. Okay. You got that, Kathy? All right. All right. Are we ready, Ms. Paulson, for the, okay.
I did want to let you know that Joseph Spencer has withdrawn his application, so today we'll just have Jill Davis and Alexander Dowers.
Good morning, Jill.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
How's the practice of law these days?
Very busy.
Very busy, huh?
Yes.
You're watching out for those judges?
Yes, we had a trial for Judge Weller last week.
Is there a decision on that, by the way?
I'm working on it. There's a decision, but I have to write it.
Oh, okay. All right, whatever. Okay. Jill, thank you. I know that you applied before and couldn't make it, right?
Yes, my fault. They went to my junk email, and I accidentally deleted the email. So my apologies.
Understood. Why don't you give us a little bit background on who you are, why you want to do this?
For background, I'm not from Nevada. I'm from New Jersey originally. For my undergrad, I went to NYU, and I studied liberal arts. Then I switched coasts. I went to the University of Southern California for law school. And there, my now ex-husband, he was in the military at the Air Force. He was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base. And I did all my work in the summers in Las Vegas. Worked for Judge Johnston, then I worked for Judge Denton and Judge Vega. And I worked at the Attorney General's office in Las Vegas for a number of years. And in 2013, I moved up to Carson City, and I really like it much better than Las Vegas. I like the small town feel. It's very enjoyable. It reminds me where I grew up in Caldwell, New Jersey, the nice small town, very historical center. I know they revitalized where I grew up too, the downtown center, not quite as nice as Carson. So things like that I think is important to keep Carson in that direction, and that's why I applied for originally the Cultural Commission and now for the Planning Commission. I'd like to hopefully put, myself to good use to the city and the county.
By way of a question, we asked the same questions of all we got two applicants today. Talk to me a little bit about, or talk to us about your feelings on growth and the growth management ordinance and planning.
Well, I think growth is very important. I mean, this is why everyone's coming out west, why Las Vegas grew, why Carson City is growing, why Reno's growing. It's way different than where I grew up, where it's kind of already set. I think it's very important to, when you're going to grow Carson City, I think you need to keep what's important, at least to me in Carson. You have that nice small town feel, very historical, but yet you need to get more businesses out here, but also in line when you're going to expand, you need to, I think, do it in a systematic way, because everyone knows about the school crisis in Nevada. You can't build all this housing, not have the school set up, not have all the other public services set up as well for the importance of growth. I think it needs to try to come together for planning just as a long term. But I mean, you do need to keep expanding and keep growing and think about it. Certain areas still need to be, like North Carson, you still have vacant areas where that Kmart is, that whole section. That's another area you could develop. Downtown, that's really just, I really think is great. I think everyone who applied for this position thinks that's great. So you preserve that and preserve it as you keep moving out as well.
Just one follow-up question on it. Do you believe that school capacity should drive, school attendance or capacity should drive growth otherwise?
I think it's very important to tie that together, because one of my friends, when he originally was trying to move his company, he wasn't sure where he wanted to go, and he thought about Nevada or California. One of the reasons he wound up actually wound up staying in California, a different town. We didn't come to Nevada because of the school system, so I think it's very important. I mean, we are, what are we, just above Mississippi, or for schools, and I actually don't have children, but I think it's very important. If I were relocating, what kind of school system would be for my children? I do have more experience in Vegas. I don't mean to always mention that, but my friends down in Las Vegas, they're all attorneys for the most part, or engineers. They all send their children to private school. And I think in Carson, what's nice, you have better schools here, so if you're going to relocate here, I think that's a nice advantage. Also over Reno, if they're thinking, well, I want to move to Northern Nevada, my company. School is very, very important. I can't imagine sending my child to a school that was ranked poorly, versus Carson is better than most of Nevada.
Okay, go ahead, Supervisor Abel. Then we'll just go like this.
Jill, thank you for applying. You have an emotionally charged development issue before you, and your best friend is part of the opposition to the project. What principles do you use to allow your rational judgment on this issue?
I used to work for the Ethics Commission. You have to recuse yourself. You have to be very careful on all that. That's one thing I think. I mean, I don't have any business ties or anything like that. I'm not from here, and that most likely would not come up if I were on the commission. But you have to disclose and talk to counsel. I'm used to actually sitting over there for all meetings. So that's, you discuss that beforehand with counsel. If you need to recuse how close the person is, I can go through Chapter 281A, but I don't think anybody wants me to do that.
How do you approach the audience in terms of, it's an emotional issue, and we've had them before us. And how do you approach an issue where you've got someone who's totally opposed to it that you're close to?
And they're going to speak at the meeting, just as a public comment. I'd listen, and as with everything, take it to, listen to what they say, listen to what everyone else says, and then we're going to, you have a public meeting and an open discussion what's going on. I wouldn't let that influence me. I mean, the whole point of being on a commission is that it's, my thoughts and my views and listening to the public, and also I read the master plan. I mean, you're going to take all that into account and perspective as to how you're going to, give your advisory a vote for that or not.
Good morning, Jill.
Good morning.
I have a similar question to Karen's, and this is the same question I always ask for this appointment. You're sitting on the Planning Commission, and a builder or developer brings a project forward that meets all of Carson City's development standards. When it comes in front of the commission, the room is filled with 100 people, all there to oppose the project. Walk us through your thought process and your actions in that scenario.
Well, I would have read all the materials beforehand. We'd have, I assume you're talking about the public comment would be very vociferous and opposed. But again, I'm still going to use my own judgment and listen to all sides to why is everybody opposed to it. And then use that. But the public comment also would be important in making my decision, because everybody lives here. If you have a lot of people come out in opposition to something, that would make me take it very seriously, more than maybe something there's no opposition, it seems, and meets all the criteria. It's a simpler vote, I would assume, in this abstract hypothetical. But there is opposition. I mean, it's going to take a lot more thought to go through, and I would think a lot more discussion between everybody on the Planning Commission there to decide, is this something maybe we should oppose, even though it does seem to meet the grand scheme? Why is there so much opposition? And then we could, again, it's going to be an open discussion, and if we go against the public, we go against the public. I mean, then they get to have another shot. It's going to go before the panel here, and you're going to, the public has another chance to, voice their opinion. Thank you.
Good morning, Jill.
Good morning.
Let's see. They stole my questions, so let me try.
I didn't do it this time.
Let me try going a little different direction. Continually, when I'm out in the neighborhoods, the public is concerned that we are pro-development, that we'll increase the density of projects or change the setbacks and things like that. And so why would you be in favor of increasing a density or a setback, or why would you not be?
I think it really depends on the neighborhood. I mean, if you're going to be downtown, you can increase the density, that's fine. But you don't have it too increased and ruin. I think what's nice about Carson City, you have, nice broad streets, sidewalks primarily, so you can walk and and make it very community friendly. But that's where I think when I read your master plan, you can have certain things where there is some variety. You're going to have some dense, some more spacious, some more about was around like 6,000, square foot parcels. So you're going to have a different variety of going through. I mean, you're going to be pro-growth is important. You want to keep Carson City growing and vibrant, and to get more people here. I'm a transplant. I have to be honest, most of my friends are transplants. I mean, I hang out with a lot of people who used to live in California, but they've all, the same as with me, have come to Carson City. We love it here. We want to stay here, make it better. I don't want it to turn into a little metropolis, though, either. I do like the quiet aspect. I mean, I own a single-family home. I enjoy that, though. Some other people want more condo, be right downtown. So I think it's important to have all different varieties, but pro-growth is important to keep this area, getting better and better. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, Jill.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, you've mentioned reading the master plan, so that's very good in my view. I'm an advocate on this board for, I'll tip my hand here, they all know this, of redoing the master plan in full for the whole community to come in. It's been 12 years since we've had that. Mm-hmm. What's your view of that? Is it a good master plan? Do you think we do review it each year, but it's kind of piecemeal, and we don't bring all the community in and say, where do you want to go from here? How do you view that? And
I actually liked your master plan. I noticed that it was older, but I actually thought it hit a lot of points. That was one of the things I was very impressed with that. I read through that, I was like, okay, you're trying to balance all the importance. So the open spaces here, keep the historical aspect. So I think that's great. I think you just got to make sure that that continues on when you actually do planning and different building. And I know there's been a lot of animosity, and I listened more, but talking about open spaces, that is important. I mean, I like, if you're going to build a new development, personally, in my opinion, I think a lot of recreational space is important, because why live in Nevada if you're not going to enjoy the outdoors and the weather? Because it's great here. You don't get, horrible winters. The summers are great if you exclude the smoke. So you do want to be outside, and I thought the master plan was trying to address all that. I'm not sure if it's always quite come into play yet. I've seen a few developments by where I work I don't care for, because I just think it's not keeping in the traditional aspect of the developments.
Thank you. My second question piggybacks a little bit on my colleagues to the right, and that is the planned unit development is kind of, I look at it as sort of a receptacle for, doing lots of things, and I'd like to know your view of the utility of and the philosophy behind the planned unit development, how you would view such if they came before you. It's a good mixed-use tool, I think, but...
When you say planned unit development, is that like the mixed development where you, I'm sorry, I'm not...
Well, yes, and if you're not familiar with it, it probably isn't a question to throw at a layperson, but it's just I look at it as a planner's tool to do anything that is allowed, and it's usually for more mixed use, although it's mostly residential.
Okay, yeah.
It fudges the setbacks, et cetera, density, et cetera. But never mind.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not a. Yeah, I don't have any background in planning, so I did read the master plan. So if I'm missing something, I apologize.
No, that's the zoning thing. That's not a problem. Thank you.
Okay, Jill, anything you want to add?
I just appreciate being able to come before you and just. I think it's a great opportunity to possibly be on the Planning Commission. So I thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, and I know I know what you do in your private life or your public life as a lawyer, and Planning Commission sometimes gets difficult decisions. You get the same thing, and they're not always they're rarely easy to do. So
yeah.
Thanks for applying, Jill. All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome to sit and listen. We have one more applicant, Alex, and then we'll see where we go.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Alex. Good to see you again.
Good to see you too, sir.
How you doing?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Doing all right. Doing all right. We all know a little bit because this is, but want to get warmed up and just talk to us about the Planning Commission, why you want to do it, and then we'll go from there. So, just.
Sure. As I said last time, I really want to get involved in the community. I have extensive experience in the building industry, and it feels like a great place to get started.
The question, you know, that I'd like to ask you is, talk to us about your thinking on the interplay between planning, zoning, growth, and I'll add schools here.
Well, I mean,
just what you think about. Talk to us about what you think about growth. If the growth management ordinance works, doesn't work, how is it interrelated with planning, and just kind of your thoughts on all that.
Sure. I do think the growth ordinance works. I believe you asked me last time, Mr. Bonkowski, about extending the maximum amount of houses that were allowable. I think we look at the right things. I think we, as Carson City, approve appropriately. I think I do think the process goes quite smoothly, and we're growth oriented. As I said last time to your question, I think we should be a little bit more concentrated on all three areas of growth that are mentioned in the master plan, whereas it's mentioned that we only concentrate on two of them. I think overall, though, I think we do quite well, and all the commissions seem to work together. I don't know how to answer the part really about how planning works with zoning, but
I guess one of the things that I'm kind of interested in hearing is one, you know, we've talked about it before, but there was an issue raised. I guess one of the questions is, should school capacity drive whether we grow or we don't grow?
No.
Okay.
Not in my humble opinion.
All right, that's fine.
That wasn't
sometimes brevity is the what is it? What's it saying there?
Soul of clarity.
Soul of clarity. All right, Karen.
Okay. Hi, Alex, and thank you for reapplying. Appreciate
thank you
that.
for having me.
You have an emotionally charged development issue before you, and your best friend is part of the opposition to this project. What principles do you use to allow your rational judgment on this issue?
What principles I use? I guess it would be my core principles, which is in regards to why I'm getting into or trying to get into politics, city planning, or that sort of thing, is to do right by my community, and it's not really about personal growth in my instance, so I would try to keep that in mind. Best friend or no best friend, I don't think that any friend of mine would expect me to take that too much into account if I have a job to do. And yeah, thank you.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Good to see you back again.
Thank you.
My question for you is similar to Karen's. You're sitting on the Planning Commission. A developer or builder brings forward a project to be reviewed by the Commission, and it meets all of Carson City's development standards. When it comes in front of the Commission, the room is filled with 100 people, all who oppose the project. So walk us through your thought process and your how do you work through that, and what is the outcome for you?
Well, that's not uncommon, the situation you're describing. First thing I would look at, which you said, you covered, it meets all the requirements. Okay, so seemingly legally we should approve it. One of the benefits that I've had, I know a planning commissioner in Washoe County, and for Washoe County, and he's a great friend of mine, and he really gets his community involved, and it's something that I really respect. So the question is, at that point, why do the 100 people that are in the room not approve it? Is it because they bought this land not knowing what land was next to them? Is it because all of a sudden we've converted what should have been protected lands into saleable lands and buildable lands, and they're against that? I'd have to gauge why the community doesn't want it. Sometimes people don't want things for the wrong reasons. They don't have a right to not want them, in my opinion, and maybe right's too strong of a word, but I hope I'm being clear. I would have to try to gauge where they're coming from, why they don't want it. And hard decisions have to be made sometimes, both directions, whether you approve or deny it. I don't know. I'm big on Nevada having open space and protected lands and places for people to enjoy, so that would weigh heavily on me. Other than that, if it's reasonable issues, if it's water, if it's just public places, streets, school capacity, anything, I take it all into account. And what are we doing to improve that school capacity? Are we building a new school? Do the developers, are they responsible for increasing road capacity, water supply, hydrology reports, all of that? But I guess to get back sort of to your question, I would try to gauge the public's reasoning for not wanting it and make my decision based off that. Thank you. Sorry if I rambled on that one.
No, you didn't ramble on. I think, it may well be a right. In fact, it probably is a right. Under the First Amendment of the Constitution, the United States Constitution, people have a right to petition their government. That's really what's going on. So use the right word, in my view. All right, Supervisor Bagwell, go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So my question, it really dovetails what the other two asked, but I'll give a specific one because it's often an issue that comes when I'm walking around in the community, the thing that tends to come up is they don't understand why we allow properties to change their density. So like medium density, low, high. And so what would be the reasons that you would allow a density change, or what would be the reasons you would not allow a density change?
Well, I fully support multifamily, multi-use properties, and so if you, in terms of zoning, I guess reasoning for changing, we would be protecting public spaces and maybe even to an extent consolidating. I like walkable and rideable places, so if it makes sense and it's doable and we're not making an ugly community, then I fully support it. We have a large amount, like over 80% of Carson City isn't touched right now, right? So let's try to keep it that way while promoting and supporting growth, like we've talked about. So reasons would vary, but I like to think I'd be in support of whatever the smartest decision would be.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, I can go with that. We'll go with that on the next one, too.
I'd like to be on the right side of that argument.
I always prove us smart. That's good. I have a couple of questions, but you said something here I need to understand. What do you mean by rideable? And the rideable, you like walkable, rideable?
I meant in terms of bicycles or...
I thought that's what you meant. I just wanted to get it straight in my head. You've referenced a master plan, and I'm always curious as to people's view of our master plan. It's been a dozen years since it's been fully updated. We review it every year, but brought the community in and say, where do you want to go from here, etc. How do you feel about that? Should we stick with what we've got, which is pretty good, or do we want to do a full review anytime soon?
If I remember correctly, through reading it, it is overdue for what was projected to be a full review, so I wouldn't say that it would be a bad idea. I haven't seen anything in there that's, stands out as far as, well, that's wrong. Everything sort of, I agree with it. So I don't, if there's time, I would, I guess, support a full review, but as long as it's being updated, which it is, I support the direction that it's moving in, so, everyone's busy, and I maybe get on the agenda for next year or something. But it does seem to be overdue, and it never hurts to take a full look at things, I think.
Thank you. My second question has to do with planned unit developments. I'm curious as to your view of them, the utility, and your philosophy regarding planned unit developments.
Planned unit developments. Can you, I'm not entirely familiar.
Okay, it's a question I probably should take out of the equation because not everybody does know, but it's sort of, I call it a receptacle for the things that, you can put various things in. You can
So like various projects?
Yeah, well, yeah, it could be for mixed use.
Silver Oak is a planned unit development.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and in terms of setbacks might be a little bit massaged, sizes of lots, all that stuff. Go ahead. That you don't have to get into that. Well, I'm going to take that question out of my questioning.
All right. Well, then I'll pass.
All right. Any other questions of Alex? Alex, I want to thank you for reapplying, and thanks for your diligence. And, board, is there anything you want to add today?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity, the second opportunity to come in front of you guys, and hope I answered your questions adequately.
Well, I think, board, I think, we have two great applicants who have done their due diligence, done their homework on what planning issues in Carson City, and there's really no right answer on how we do these things, and Alex, I think in one sense you deserve a heads up because you're the second, you're reapplying, and I think we'd actually encourage you to reapply. So.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, and Jill, it's kind of where we are. I don't know how this board's going to come down, but that's my sense. So, board, what do you want to do?
I'll make a motion.
Yeah. Motion.
I move to approve the mayor to appoint Alex Dowers to the Carson City Planning Commission for an unexpired term that will expire January of 2021.
Second.
There's a motion, a second on the motion. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay. Jill, you did an excellent job. Please stay in the mix. Sorry you missed the first go-around. It went in your spam file or wherever. But we need folks, like you two here, good talent. So don't take anything from this, don't take away from here something that says that anybody did anything right or wrong. Just bear with us and keep us in mind because it's the right thing to do to help your community. Thanks. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I add something to that?
Sure.
Yeah. Karen is Karen Aboud is our member on the Cultural Commission. I've already spoken up when she leaves office. I'd like to get on it, and I think you'd be a great addition to that, which was your original application. So come back for that if you're really still interested in it, because we need both kinds of smart people on these kinds of commissions, and that's a passion of mine, and it sounds like it's a passion of yours.
Okay. Anything else? You're in the soup now. You're in the fire. So
Careful
forward
what you
to it.
aspire to.
I know. That's what my wife told me too. Careful.
You're in the fire, man. Out of the pan into the fire. All right.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, board. Are we towards the end here? We're on non-action items. All right, board members, got anything? All right, there are a couple things happening. One, next Tuesday, as we heard at the beginning, there is the 9/11 ceremony at Mills Park where the I-beam is. It's right near the
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Then. And I want to say something else here. There is, what did I do with it here? On November 9th, this is a little bit away, but on November 9th, there's at the Capitol Complex right next door to us from City Hall, the Battleborn Memorial will, for being put up by the Nevada Department of Veterans Service, will be held right between the State Archives building and the Supreme Court. That's on November 9th. That'll be at 10 o'clock. Seems to me there was something else I was going to say, that other things happening, but it's probably enough for right now. I will not be here at the next board meeting on the 20th because I'm going to take my wife and I are going to be on the chamber tour. It's going to Croatia of all things. So, and I know Supervisor Bunkowski's going to his annual hunting, that hunting ground in this, wherever it is. Where do you go to hunt? Is that what you're doing?
Spain.
Spain? Going to go hunt in Spain?
I'm also not going to be here,
he's
so
not gonna-
the women are going to be here.
Yeah,
Well, you'll be
Brad will be
there.
there.
The day after the meeting.
Oh, the day.
Okay, I won't be here.
The three of us will
Good.
hold down.
Hold up the mail.
Hold up the mail. Yeah.
We'll have three.
So it's probably going to be an easy, we'll take a look at what the agenda is going to be on the 20th, but maybe since there'll only be three of us here, these things happen, so we'll see where that goes.
We can get a lot done.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I know, man.
Cats away,
I ought to
mice
take this.
fly.
Maybe I ought to take the gavel to Croatia. You know, I got it here.
Be careful,
All right.
that's right.
All right. Anybody got anything else? Nancy, you got anything?
Nothing else?
Okay. All right. Board, are we ready to adjourn? All right. Look at that. 11:30.
Final public comment?
Final public comment. Thank you very much. Anybody? No, not. All right. Listen. Without objection, we're adjourned.